Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the Finance and Budget Committee meeting for the month of August of the Washington County Quorum Court to order. Tonight, Justice Ecke has agreed to do us the honor of prayer and pledge. Justice Ecke.
Thank you, Judge, for the honor. Will you all rise and bow your heads in reverence and respect? Heavenly Father, we thank you that we can come to you in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and bring all of our burdens and concerns, all of our petitions, and you hear us. And you not only hear us, but you answer us. So we're asking you for insight and solutions to the budget process and to the budget, that this be the banner year of accomplishing great things because we asked for this. So we thank you for the blessing of asking and receiving. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Justice Ecke. With that, we'll move to the adoption of the agenda. Do I have any amendments to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. I have a motion to adopt the agenda by Justice Lyons, a second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The agenda has been adopted. With that, we'll move to our monthly reports. First up is Treasurer Hill. Good evening, Treasurer Hill.
Right into 4.1, Treasurer Financial Summary. Fairly uneventful month for July. You look at the first line, general expenses came in higher than revenue, while the road and jail revenue was slightly better than expenditures. But all the ending balances remain healthy. At the bottom of this report, we began with $103 million in the bank, and we ended the same way. 4.2, the ARPA report, $41.6 million in obligations. Expenses have gone up to 30.6, have 15.8 remaining in that fund. 4.3, the general fund property taxes, $475,000 came in. For the second straight month, we were down, but for the year, we're still up 5.6%, so we're still in good shape. 4.4, the 1 cent sales tax, $910,000 came in. That's 7.34% better than this time last year. These are for May collections. 4.5, the jail tax, $1.3 million came in, same percentage increase, but through 7 months, we're $750,000 above the same period last year. 4.6, the half-cent state road tax, $224,000 came in. It's 8.72% above last year. 4.7, I added this. This is the my preliminary revenue projections for the budget process. As I tell all new JPs, these can and will change several times before we end up here in November voting on the budget. So just keep that in mind. A couple of things, especially for the new JPs. Each fund has carryover. That is what I expect to come in, or what I expect to be left going into 2024, minus the 2023 bills that still have to be paid. But let's see what else. And all the other line items are new revenues expected in 2024. You see at the bottom of the general fund, $55.7 million in revenue. State mandates that we hold 10% of that back, so you would have about the general fund would have about $50 million available to budget if this scenario played out. Let's see. I'll call your attention to underneath the general fund, 7201, local current property taxes. As soon as this went out, of course, the assessor's office sent me the numbers I needed for this, so That 19.2 will likely be 21 million the next time I update these, so it's gone up quite a bit. And in relation to that, it's possible, it's not set in stone till the end of September, that we may have a millage rollback, state mandated millage rollback, because our property taxes are through the roof, as everybody knows who opened their envelope lately. But it's at 13.1% growth over last year, and it's capped at, you can't go above 10. So once it hits above 10, then the millage is rolled back. But even with that, we're still looking to be 2 million over what we were last year. So I think it's, if it happened today, it would be 0.2 mil reduction, and the court would decide if you wanted to take it out of general or road or library's been voted on by the people, so I don't believe that can be touched. Let's see. I believe that's it. Take any questions?
Questions, Treasurer Hill? Justice Lemming?
Thank you, Chair. Bobby, that millage, how bad will that affect anybody, the rollback of it?
I mean, you'll,
The cities
if we
and
didn't have a
towns?
rollback, it's right around 600,000 per tenth. So we would lose, I wouldn't say lose, but we would not get 1.2 million if it's reduced by 2.2 mils.
When you say we, the county, as general fund, or does it affect anybody but cities and schools and
Oh, it's affecting
a lot of people?
almost every city and almost every school is facing this rollback. Like I said, it's not set in stone it's gonna happen, because they're gonna redo the numbers in September, late September. So I'm not sure.
So we don't know really how much it will affect them.
Even if the millage is cut or reduced, that, like I said, that 19.2 million is still gonna be close to 21 million. So we are gonna see a substantial increase, although obviously if you won't see as much of an increase. if
But
it's
we'll see the increase on the house taxes more, and we'll lower the millage, so the county taxes are gonna be okay, but the cities will lose money. Is that what I understand?
I'm assuming everybody's probably in our shape that the values have gone up so much that
Yeah.
they're still gonna make more than they did last year, although they do have a millage cut. Doesn't make sense that way, but
Yeah, it don't make sense, but
that's
thank
the way
you.
it is this year, so.
Thank you.
Justice Coker?
Thank you, Judge. Treasurer Hill, what year will this say it happens? When will we feel that? I mean, will it be the
The
following
collections
year,
next year, so it
2024?
will affect the 2024 budget.
But it won't, oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Justice Pond?
Okay, Bobby, so all said and done, how much will a tenth of a mil bring in annually?
With today's numbers and everybody paying, which they don't, but 595,000 per tenth is the 100% payment, so.
And so that'll roll back to 500,000 or what, I mean?
Let's see, I think I got that somewhere. Let's see. I mean, the tenth is gonna be the same
Yeah,
regardless. You're just, the millage is gonna be rolled back to make up for that 3.1% over that 10%. So it's still gonna be about 595,000 if everybody, now, we would only see probably, because we have to take stuff out of it, and not everybody's gonna pay, so 530,000, 540,000 is what we actually see in money
we're gonna actually see 530,000
per tenth.
per tenth
That's my
That'll be-
estimate,
next year,
yes.
okay.
So if you do the let's see, like 4.4 mills with the assessor's breakdown. $5.9 billion is the assessed value of Washington County. 4.4 mills where we're currently sitting would be 26.1 million.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Again, we wouldn't see 26.1 million because there's several things that have to be deducted, but still a substantial increase.
Justice Taylor?
Thank you. Excuse my ignorance, but I haven't looked at the Constitution in a while. So does it catch up? Like, when we have this huge increase in values and then that increase is capped, is that only for year one and then you catch up the remainder over the course between assessments or not necessarily?
That's a good question.
You know what I mean?
I'm
You know what I'm
delving into
saying?
the assessor's office
Right, yeah.
stuff here, so I'm not
And it's also.
totally sure to give you a correct answer on that, but I think the Constitution's Amendment 79 is what,
That sounds right. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I mean, it's rare that we get these huge increases. So I didn't know if there was something built in to where it's spread over time or if it's lost permanently.
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Like next year, if it would,
Well, in year two,
if it would
right?
revert back.
Right.
I can't.
Well, if if
that.
it was a 5% cap, but the real increase was 7%, in year 2 through 5, would you make the other 2% up, or can you make the other 2% up?
I'm not sure. I would just, hopefully Mr. Russell Hill will
Okay.
come
I
and
didn't know if you
explain
knew
all
the
this
answer to
once
that or
we're,
not.
because like I said, this is preliminary and it may not even happen.
Okay.
But
I mean,
I am ignorant
judging
of-
by the values.
I'm
I'd say
ignorant
it's
of that
likely.
part of the law, so.
Yep. Thank you.
Any more follow-ups for Treasurer Hill? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move into the employees' insurance report. Mr. Angel? Good evening, sir.
Evening, Judge. How are you?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day today.
Yes, sir. Well, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to start with the cash flow. I know it's a little bit out of order, but it's the color copy here. And forgive me, my team printed this small on me, so I'm going to have to show my age. All right, so we had a little higher month on total claims. This month, we were at a little over 564,000. Last June, we were at 489,000. Those numbers are a little deceptive because we do have a little over 20 more members on the plan this year than we had last June. So we're a little closer to fully staffed there. But either way, a fairly high number, even compared to the total cost in the other months this year. But as we've pointed out in the past, the rebates are continuing to pay a dividend. That's on the new pharmacy benefit manager contract we had. You'll see we had the largest rebate to date of a little over $138,000. To take you to the bottom of that column, you see RX rebates year to date are $333,000. The full year last year, we generated $322,000 in RX rebates. So this shows us halfway through the year, and the new contract we were able to acquire this year is really paying dividends. I would say at a minimum, we'll get 2 more rebates for the year. And since we're already $10,000 ahead of where we were for the entire year last year, that's what's going to make the difference, I think, for our plan this year. Going all the way down to the bottom, plan funding difference for the year, we dipped down into the negative, unfortunately. That's $105,000 through June to the negative, but though that's not what we want to see, again, we had that reserve, which, as you guys remember, last month we were showing at about $3.22 million. So that $100,000 does come out of our reserve. But if we move on to our total budget sheet here, this gives us kind of a sneak peek to see where we were through July numbers without having the breakdown. You'll see our reserve budget is up by $220,000, or well, again, let me show you a little bit here. Yes, to $3.44 million. So we like to keep that number between $3 million and $3.4 million, and we're at the upper end of that. So I think we're still in a pretty darn good spot halfway through the year.
Questions for Mr. Angel? Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too, sir. With that, we'll have the comptroller's report, comptroller story.
Good evening, Judge. Good evening, Court. I believe 6.1 is the Statement of Operations of Expenses. We are now 58% through the year with 7 months reporting. And I find that only one fund is slightly over that, the road fund, which would be obviously seasonal as their expenses ramp up in the summertime. They're at 61% versus 58% for the year consumed. Everybody else is below that in line 7, row 7, column 8. You see that we're at 43% spent actual for the year thus far. And then if you look at an assumed 30-day outlook beyond that in column J, you see that we're at 67% through the year if you add another 30 days to July 31st. And everybody is below that with one exception, and that, well, road fund is right on that 67% when you include encumbrances. And we're at 53% for all funds. They're at column J, line 7. Nothing that I noted to be out of the materially out of order. Looking at the other funds down below, so this summary seems to be painting us a pretty good picture of where we stand in those top 8 rows of that report. Going to the next report for unappropriated reserves. Most of the activity last month in ordinances was to cover the property insurance that we all know increased significantly, and that's those items in column P that are painted in white, covering fire and extended coverage shortfall being spread over the various departments. Other than that, we had the ambulance service shortfall of about $15,000 in column H, or excuse me, column G, line 17. So other than that, there wasn't too much activity on the unappropriated reserves for the month. So I'll entertain any questions that anybody might have.
Questions for Comptroller Story? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. With that, we're going to move into the new business portion of our meeting. First up is item number 7, an ordinance amending ordinance 2022-107, the 2022 Washington County budget to appropriate professional development recognition payments. As you can see by this ordinance, the state legislature created an act this year that incentivized licensing and credentialing for the assessor's office, and this is us appropriating that money so that that can be used to fund that purpose. Justice Lemming?
I make a motion that we send it to the full quorum court for passage.
I have a motion to move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, a second by Justice Lyons. Are there any further discussion or questions? Any public comments on item number 7? With that, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lemming, a second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 7 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 8, an ordinance recognizing and appropriating additional funding of $1,200 for 2023. The Washington County received an additional $1,200 from the Hunger Relief Alliance to help fund the Cooking Matters program for Circuit Court 8. This is us accepting that money and then, of course, appropriating it to their budget so they can utilize it. Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. I'd like to make a motion that we pass this on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke. I heard second by Justice Dean. Is there any further questions or discussion on this item? Any public comments on item number 8? Seeing none, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item 8.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 8 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 9, an ordinance anticipating revenue totaling $833,001 in the Crisis Stabilization Unit Grant Fund. This is us establishing ordinance to accept the state-funded money from the CSU and allocating it to the budget so that we can hopefully keep our service provider. Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. I make a motion that we send this to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Simons, a second by Justice Lyons. Is there any discussion by the group? Questions? Justice Rios Stafford?
Has there been any updates on the CSU funding situation?
I have none to report at this time. We're still working with the governor's office to come up with some solutions there, and so hopefully something pans out. I will say as soon as I know something, I'll try to pass you guys a note so that you can be in them. We've had a couple of meetings with our state legislators to try to make them understand how important this is so they can do what they can in Little Rock on our behalf, and to that point, that's about as much as I have right now. So, any other questions, comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, we'll take up the item. I have a motion to pass item 9.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Simons, a second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 9 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 10.1, an ordinance establishing the compensation for the Washington County Election Commissioners and repealing ordinance 1995-11. There was a new act this year that raised the stipends for election commissioners, and this is recognizing that and appropriating additional funds. Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. I'd like to make a motion to pass this on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion by Justice Ecke to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. I heard second by Justice Pond. Are there any further questions about this ordinance, comments? Any public comments on item 10.1? I see none. We will take up the question. I have a motion to pass item 10.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Pond. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 10.1 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 11, an ordinance anticipating and appropriating additional revenue of $60,000 in the Rural Community Grant Fund for 2023. Washington County will receive $60,000 in a grant application from the National Conservancy Arkansas Rivers and Unpaved Roads Project. This is us accepting those funds and appropriating to the road department for usage. Justice Lyons?
Make a motion, we pass this to full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons. I heard second by Justice Dean. Any further discussion or questions on this? Justice Lemming.
Which bridge we gonna work on?
I don't think that decision's been made yet. This is a new one for us, so.
Well, I've got 3 that's out. I need some help.
Yep. I
Thank you.
understand that. Cool. Justice Taylor?
Thank you, Judge. I don't know if it matters or not, but I wonder, is that supposed to be the Nature Conservancy?
Dr. Russell, you don't know that right off the top of your head, do you?
I think it's natural, but I'll double check.
My suggestion would be that we take whatever action you guys deem appropriate, and we'll try to look that up, and if there's a Scrivener's error, we'll take care of it at the full quorum court. Is that okay?
Okay. Yep.
Is that good, Justice
Yes, sir.
Taylor?
Yes, sir.
Any other discussion or questions on this item? Any public comments on item 11.1? Seeing none, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item 11.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item number 11 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 12.1, an ordinance reducing obligations in the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA Fund 3046 by $91,894.55. This is deappropriating the money that was budgeted for 2023 for the ARPA administrator position. As you guys are well aware, we've eliminated that position and we don't have any plans to refill it. We feel like those monies would be better obligated back underneath the American Rescue Plan Act. That takes that money out of that budget and puts it back in the act. Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. A motion to pass this on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, a second by Justice Lyons. Any further discussion or questions on this item? Public comments on item 12.1? All right, we'll take up the question. I have a motion to pass item 12.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, a second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 12 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item 13.1, an ordinance amending the Circuit Court 8 budget for 2023. If I'm not mistaken, did I see Judge Warren walk in? Judge Warren, would you like to just give us a quick background on this ordinance?
Is this on? Good evening. This ordinance is requesting an increase in salary for our newly hired director. This person had served in the intake position. As you'll recall, Division 8 got its new staff in 2022. This person has exemplified what I want to see on my team, which is that she came into the intake position, didn't know exactly what was needing to be done. She took bull by the horns, figured out what that meant, came up with policies and procedures, and really was a leader on the team. When I had a opening for the director, she stepped into that position, and in the short time that she's been there has really just taken extraordinary action to come up to speed. I'm asking that she be hired at the first quartile, and that higher salary be retroactive to the date of her hiring, which was July 10th.
Justice Ecke?
July 10th of 2023.
Correct.
Judge, I'd like to make a motion to pass this on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with the due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke. I heard second by Justice Dean. Are there any other discussion or questions on this item? I think we're good. Thank you, Judge Warren.
Thank you very much.
Any public comments on item number 13.1? Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 13.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 13 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 14.1, an ordinance amending the Juvenile Detention Center budget for 2023. Director Tinsley's here, but what this essentially is he has two equivalent positions and one is currently open. And through that process, we've noticed there's a disparity between the two positions. One makes less than the other. This corrects that to where the equally qualified and equally rated positions make the same amount of money. That's what this ordinance does. So with that background, we'll do that real quick, and if you guys have more in-depth questions, we can bring Director Tinsley up here if needed. Justice Cogar?
Thank you, Judge. I make a motion that we pass this on to the full quorum court with the due pass resolution.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Cogar. I heard second by Justice Lyons. Is there any further discussion or questions on this item? Is there any public comments on item number 14.1? Oh, I'm sorry, Justice Ecke?
This just hit me. Will this be retroactive?
This will be proactive because the position is currently open.
Oh, it's
So when he
currently
hires
open.
it, this will fix
Okay.
it and move on.
Currently open. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Public comments on item number 14.1? Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item 14.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Cogar, a second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 14 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 15, an ordinance amending the prosecuting attorney budget for 2023. Prosecutor Durrett, would you like to come up here and give us some quick background on this ordinance, sir?
Good evening, everybody. These positions, well, in Articles 1 through 4 were part of the overall grade. I went through and updated all of our job descriptions for every employee and submitted them for grade increases or adjustments and whatnot. Some of them came back with grade adjustments and some didn't, but there were some, the first 4 that I've requested, that they go into effect instead of with the 2024 budget, go into effect upon approval by the quorum court, because I would like to make up for some salary disparities in our office based on, some people making, some people in the same position making less than others. And so that's why these 4 I have requested now instead of with the 2024 budget. The rest of them I just did with the normal course of things. So, and on number 5, the bilingual victim assistance coordinator, that was something that was taken up last month, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we forgot to send it through finance. We thought we had it covered, but it went through JSAP back in June. I think it just went through county services in June and didn't go through finance. So that is for an exceptionally well-qualified hire, our bilingual victim assistant. The previous one left to take another position with more money and I shouldn't say it was all money, but in any event, left. And so we hired someone in, and the victim assistance positions, not that others in our office aren't difficult, but the victim assistant positions are very difficult because lots of times you're always dealing with victims of crime, and lots of times you're dealing with sometimes people who are not very happy. And the more cases that we get, the more cases that our victim assistants have to deal with. And so the bilingual is, she's Spanish speaking. It's very difficult. It's hard to find someone who's qualified. And the one that we hired is very well qualified. She's got a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and Criminal Justice. She spent the last few years with the Fayetteville Police Department in a support specialist position, handling police reports and whatnot. And she also worked in the community service portion of it, dealing with customer service and whatnot. And so that allowed her to be much more well-equipped to come in than your average person filling a position. And the transition has, the person that she replaced was, we were heartbroken to see her go because she was so outstanding, but our new hire has come in and has filled her shoes a lot quicker than we would have expected. So that's why I'm consider her exceptionally well qualified, and have asked that she be moved up. I think it's just below the first quartile.
Justice Secchi?
Thank you, Judge. Matt, when's the start date to the regrading? Are you going to do retro?
No, not on the regrading, no. It's upon approval.
Effective upon approval. Okay, and this will carry into your 2024 budget request,
Yes.
correct?
That is correct.
Okay, no glitches or somebody got left out?
No, I mean, the others will be included, but there were some that I felt was important to do it right now.
Okay, that's fine. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Any other questions for Prosecutor Durrett? Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. I'm curious, I'm fine with this ordinance, but under Article 1, the hot check administrator, I just wonder, my husband's the only person I know who still writes checks.
Mm-hmm.
So how big of a problem is our hot checks in Washington County?
They're not near as big as they used to be, but that is just as the number of hot checks that we prosecute dwindles, she picks up more responsibilities. Like she now is responsible for all of the probation revocations when they come in, determining whether or not a request from the probation office whether or not that a person has violated the conditions of their probation, and then does all the paperwork to do all that. And that's close to 1,000 per year.
Oh, okay.
She also serves as backup to our hot check administrator, who does a number of other things, including all our mental commitments and things like that. So
I'm fine with that. I wasn't questioning her
no,
job.
no,
I was
it's,
just
well,
curious.
it's a very valid question, because when we first got the position, it was probably before I started in the office in 1998. So that's back when we would handle over $1 million in hot checks a year. And so now, I mean, I write 1 or 2 checks a month, and so most people don't.
Like I say, my husband writes checks. I don't know anyone else that does. Okay, I would like to make a motion that we pass this ordinance, and we send it on to the quorum court with the due pass resolution.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Coger. I heard second by Justice Lyons. Justice Ecke?
I have one more question. Would you ever consider retitling that position?
If we could come
maybe-
up with the appropriate title instead of kind of a jack of all trades, that's kind of how a lot of our folks are when you have something.
Certainly.
But they kind of handle. I would, and it's probably not a bad idea.
It's up to you.
Yeah, it's food for thought, definitely.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Judge.
Any other questions or comments on this ordinance? Any public comments on item number 15.1? Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item 15.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Coger, a second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 15 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 16, an ordinance amending the county communications budget for 2023. During our Tunnels to Towers event, we had some expenses associated with the program that we put on to open that particular event. The stage rental was actually paid out of the communications director's budget. We would like to appropriate funds from the donated funds and get that paid. Our ultimate goal here is we're trying to settle up all those expenditures. We will have funds left over, and we're going to make an additional donation to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation for their work. And so we're trying to get this, all these expenses wrapped up, and hopefully we'll have an action to take on making a greater donation. Justice Lyons?
And make a motion, we pass this on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. Is there any further comments or questions from the board, from the court? Justice Ecke?
That was just a very moving exhibition. If anybody has an opportunity to see it again, or if we are blessed to have it come here again, please go see it.
Absolutely.
And let us always remember, it was tremendous. So thank you, and Veterans Affairs
Director Dykes.
Dykes from bringing it here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Any public comments on item 16.1? Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item 16.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 16 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 17.1, an ordinance amending the county comptroller budget for 2023. I'll explain this. If we have additional in-depth questions, we'll ask Comptroller Story. We had Ms. Marks, our payroll administrator in our office, moved to a new position that was created in the Sheriff's Department. So we're extremely excited for her, but that was quite a loss for us at the county. So we've done some reshuffling. We've promoted some people. One of the things is our accounts payable coordinator is very dedicated, and she has a lot of knowledge. She's taking on additional duties now because her assistant was the one that moved now, who is in the payroll coordinator position. This is much like Prosecutor Durrett's position, where this was a position that was going to be regraded, and we were going to do this at the first of the year. Comptroller Story sees it appropriate to move that back to make it effective on approval this year, so that she can go ahead and we can get her moved up so that she can continue to lead that department and take on those additional duties as we find a replacement for her assistant AP director. Justice Ecke?
Thank you, Judge. A motion to pass this on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke. I heard a second by Justice Lyons. Is there any further discussion or questions on this item? Any public comments on item number 17.1? Seeing none, we're going to take up the question. I have a motion to pass item number 17.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Ecke, a second by Justice Lyons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 17.1 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 18.1 is our quarterly salary deappropriation. Once again, mechanically, every quarter, at the end of every quarter, any unspent salary funds get deappropriated and moved back into the general fund. We do this every quarter, and so with that, I'll take motions or questions on this item. Justice Lyons?
Make a motion, we pass this to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons. I heard second by Justice Dean. Justice Ecke?
Thank you. This was part of the budget controls for the 2023 budget, correct? Is this part of budget controls?
That's correct, yep.
Do they change from year to year? Or can we keep these budget controls?
The
as
budget
is?
controls?
Mhm.
The budget controls is for the next year is one of the final items that we pass as part of our budget process.
Okay, is this in there?
I believe this is in there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any public comments on item number 18.1? Seeing none, we're going to take up the item. I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by Justice Lyons, second by Justice Dean. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 18.1 will move to the full quorum court. Justice Lyons?
I'd like to make a motion, we have a consent agenda going to the quorum court that includes items 7 through 18.
I have a motion to pass items number 7 through 18 to be on a consent agenda at the full quorum court meeting. Motion by Justice Lyons. I think I heard second by Justice Simons. Any objections to that? With that, all those in favor of putting those items on the consent agenda?
Aye.
Those opposed? Items number 7 through 18 will move to the consent agenda. Without objection, I'd like to take about a 5-minute break while we transition into our budget review. I've got to get some things set up, and I think maybe you guys will switch your screens, make sure you have what you need on your laptops, and we'll pick this up in about 5 minutes.
Brisket is always looking
Okay, let's start making our way back. Okay. I hate to interrupt good conversation, but we've got a long evening still ahead of us here, and I want to make sure that we're going to give everybody their due time. Side note, I just learned that it was Justice Hires' birthday today. And we all know there is no place she'd rather be this evening than enjoying it with several of her best friends. With that, guys, it's hard to imagine that we're in August and we're going to start our budget review again over the next couple months, several weeks. I want to make a few comments just to kind of frame this up and tee this up for you. As we begin this, I want us all to remember that this is going to be an iterative process. We are doing the very best we can in my office. Comptroller Story is working extremely hard to mitigate any challenges that we see. We're really, really trying to condense the information and get it to you as justices as efficiently as we can so that you guys can make the decisions that you need to make. In a perfect world, we could just stop all county operations and work on the budget, but unfortunately, we all know that's not possible. So this is going to feel like inevitably that we're kind of hitting a moving target, and I apologize for that frustration, but I think it's just the dynamics of having a county this size and doing the things that we are. I want you guys to understand I push to start this process as early as possible, and I do that so that you guys can start digesting the information as early as possible and asking questions. All that being said, the process is not linear in the way we're going, okay? And so please bear with us and understand that. Comptroller Story has worked extremely hard on this worksheet. I think we're in a better position than we've ever been in terms of working through the budget with some of the resources that we have, and so I'm very optimistic about that. But that being said, we're going to have to perfect this process as we move along. One of the reasons I decided that the judge's budget should go first is that we can be quote-unquote kind of the guinea pig. And so if this becomes cumbersome or we need to put different measures in, that we can do that and hopefully serve the other elected officials in a better capacity, having kind of worked out the kinks in this way. So as we're going to move through this tonight, I really want to stress our focus is going to be on the 2,000 and 3,000 line items. And what these line items represent are the ongoing operational expenses of the county. What does it cost the county to keep the lights on and the doors open from any given time, okay? And then after we move through that, Comptroller Story's worksheet does a very good job about highlighting certain line items that have seen large increases or decreases, so our goal is to explain those this evening. And then also towards the end, any new capital expenditures or new personnel are not included in the budgets. We're going to submit justification letters that you guys received this evening to justify those. And as we move through the process, you can understand the need for those and start trying to deliberate on those throughout the process. The way I see this playing out is kind of the way we've done this the last couple of years. I know if you're a new justice, that doesn't mean much. I don't expect any votes on anything tonight. What I foresee this as is the budget's been submitted to you guys, and it's now for you guys to digest and look at and eventually make some decisions and eventually pass a budget in ordinance form to the full quorum court. And so it's not our expectation that you guys pass any particular budgets tonight or give any determination on any of the new capital or the personnel. As you guys know, we've touched on a little bit tonight. We've worked very hard, Director Burchett and her HR team, to regrade all the county positions in the county to get them in the appropriate classification that they need to be in. What that does is gets us all kind of on a level playing field now. You know, for so long we've had frustrations about when we go out and we do salary adjustments or flat raises, things like that. If you're not in the proper grade, it exacerbates that problem. Well, now we're here. Some of the stuff we've done now, a lot of it will be included in the 2024 budgets. So there will be personnel additions to that. You'll see higher costs there, but that is not any kind of a raise. It's just the cost of getting the positions in the county in the right grade. There's a lot of work still be done on the personnel side. I foresee us at some meeting taking that up. What is the will of the court in terms of giving raises this year, how we kind of want to handle that. We're going to work up some suggestions for you guys on things for you to consider. All that being said, this is an example of this is not linear. I'm forcing this. I want us to start on this process before we're quite ready to do the personnel side. Does that make sense? Just so you can start getting an idea of where we are operationally. I want to say that my communications to my team has been, we hear that we're a very blessed region. We're seeing good tax revenue, but there are a lot of uncertainties still. I think when you walk through this budget process, you're going to start getting an idea about how much of the inflationary pressures that we're seeing, not just in the supplies that we're using as a county, but also in the personnel, the job market, inflationary costs. So I still would like for us to exercise caution, and that's been what my message to my team is. Let's ask and have considered the most critical needs that we have as a county. By no means are we looking at this as we're flush with cash and let's figure out ways to spend it. We're trying to ask for what we only think is completely necessary. We are making, you'll see in our justification letters, we're going to try to make significant investments in safety, security, and service for our county. Those are our main missions, is that we want to make sure that we're secure, but we also want to make sure that we're giving the citizens, the taxpayers, efficient and effective service in everything that we do. There's one, this is very granular. You're going to see in the budgets that several of the budgets have overtime costs for the first time. That is due to a change in policy that me and Chief Johnson have implemented. We are moving our offices away from this concept of comp time. We see that to be very problematic for legal reasons and everything else. And so what it is if an employee works overtime, we want them to be paid, and we want the county to be square with that employee every payday. And so that's why you're going to see some of those costs, is that every now and then, and we need that in there in the budget because an employee might work over. Of course, that affects certain departments a lot more than it does others, depending on the nature of their service that they're given. I just want to alert you to that. It's not like we're trying to give people raises under the table or anything like that. It's just this change in policy where we feel much more, we feel like that's a much better way to move forward. Lastly, I want to just say this. I've asked all my directors to be here this evening to present their budgets because they know their departments the best, okay? I want to ask you guys a favor. Please keep in mind that these are county employees. They are not in the political world. Most of them do not desire to be in the political world. And so what I'm saying is let's host them and I'm not saying you can't ask them tough questions and get their take on things, but if you have policy disagreements with my administration or things like that, let's take that up. Not tonight, but I'm not dodging those debates and those questions, but tonight I'd really like us to focus on the budget, particularly since we have so many. And so I'd ask for your cooperation with that tonight. And if I can jump in and answer any questions, I will too, okay? So with that, we're going to get started. First up is, hey, let's do the county judge, right? Walk the walk, right? Let me see if I can get this loaded back up. Of course, you can't get the password right. course, I had this already. Okay. You have to use the right password. Okay. So if you queue up the county judge's budget, of course, there's not really a whole lot of changes up there in the salary section. Those are gonna be pretty set. If you can see what. Which tab do we get first? I'm sorry, this will be the tab 1000-0100. Yeah, if you go, there's several yellow tabs at the bottom that will allow you to move it. I like to use the budget by elected official. Is she, just a second? Okay. Justice Coker, did you have something before we started?
Question, I'm sorry, Judge, thank you. I just had a question. Why, and maybe everyone else knows this, but why are new capital expenditures not in here?
Because I've always considered the fairest way to do that is towards the end. You guys are gonna have to make decisions on what's included in the budget and what's not. Our expectation is there's gonna be more requests than there are funds. And I'm trying to give you guys an idea of what it costs, where we're gonna be at in the grand scheme of the budget to keep the county going. And then after that, kind of layering on top these additional capital and personnel costs, if that's what the pleasure of the court is.
Okay.
Okay. So that being said, there's a few line items here. This is mostly, I will say this is what keeps my office running. So these are mostly administrative expenses. I think that there are, if you look at the percentage changes, there's some pretty high percentages there, but I'd like for us to focus on the actual dollars. I think this is a pretty meager budget, if you will, and so the percentages can get out of line pretty quickly. Most all of these, I would say, are just the increases of doing business in terms of the supplies and everything. You can see I have fuel for travel. A lot of these are associated with travel, and if you see all the way down to the dues and memberships, those are different organizations that the county is a part of and that I represent the county in. And also, I'm kind of jumping around here, postage is up. Other professional services, that's a line item that is kind of a catch-all for the county. That's any kind of service that we elicit outside of the office that we won't perform ourselves. And so those are kind of the high points of that budget. Are there any questions to this? We don't have any additional personnel or capital requests, so this budget right here will be what we will submit for final consideration. I would say the largest, in my mind, one of the largest jumps down there is if you look at item number 3094, line item 3094 is meals and lodging. That is any time that we travel as an office and go stay somewhere. That is mostly consumed by lodging. Justice Ecke?
Refresh my memory, wasn't insurance liability, a general liability, going to go through the roof?
Yes, and that's a great question. Those will be broken up over all the associated budgets. So if you look at line item number 3052, fire and extended coverage, you will see, mine goes from $150 to $250. That's a big jump percentage-wise, not so much in actual dollars, but you're going to see as we walk through all these budgets that people have been assigned that new cost so that we can cover that budget next year. There's nothing we can do. We continue to work on that problem, but our options are pretty pretty scarce there. Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. Other sundry insurance. What falls into that category?
I'm not quite sure about that. Chief, are you? Okay. I know that's a horrible answer, but that's another cost that I'm assigned.
Okay.
Comptroller, do you have any follow-up on that, what the difference in that category is and the other fire and extended coverage is?
I believe that's dealing with liability coverage
Liability coverage is what?
opposed to property insurance, which is what you were talking about earlier.
Comptroller says it's liability, professional liability as opposed to property coverage.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any questions? Does anybody want a couple more minutes, or can I move on, or? Okay, with that, the next one up on my list is Buildings and Grounds. Director Gonzalez?
Buildings and Grounds has had an amazing year so far, especially after beginning the year with a catastrophic flood on the first floor. And Buildings and Grounds touches every part of the county every day. And we focus on 4 major areas. The first is fixed assets. It's one of the lesser known parts of Buildings and Grounds. Fixed assets, we have one fixed asset manager, and they document and monitor all county inventory and all county fixed assets. They are responsible for the annual fixed asset report that is presented to the legislative audit every single year. And on top of that, another important responsibility that they do is they initiate and complete what we call property control records. We call them PCRs. In 2022, we processed 166 separate PCRs for various departments in the county that covered hundreds of pieces of inventory, whether for disposal or whether for interdepartmental transfer. But we keep track of all of that. The second item that we focus on, of course, is maintenance. And maintenance currently consists of 1 manager and 4 technicians that service almost 500,000 square feet every day, when a total of 32 separate facilities and 5 parcels of land that consist of about 10 acres. And so in 2022, maintenance completed 523 work orders, and that's not including preventive maintenance, lawn care, projects, and emergencies. And so far to date, we have completed 767 separate work orders for a rise so far of 244 work orders. And again, that's not including preventive maintenance, lawn care, emergencies, things like that, like snow removal and ice removal that we got hit with early in the spring. The third item that we focus on is janitorial. And janitorial currently consists of 1 manager, 1 floor technician, and 7 janitorial persons that cover 15 facilities totaling 262,695 square feet every night. And all of those facilities every single night with only that many janitorial persons. And they carefully maintain a rigorous nightly floor care routine where they go from building to building on a set schedule, taking care of the county floors. And on top of that, we hold quarterly safety trainings for all of them. The last one that's little known that we do, and that is contracting and projects management, to where there has not been a year since I've been here that we have not built or renovated or remodeled some area in the county, and most of the time we have one of those projects going on continually. And so we focus on keeping the lights on, the toilets flushing, the heat on, the air on, so that the employees that work inside the facilities can faithfully and comfortably serve the citizens of this great county. And so with that, if you look at your budget there, and you look in my supply budget, we did not raise the supply budget very much at all. The one that you can kind of see that's up, that I highlighted besides janitorial supplies, which is just regular inflation, is raising the medicine and drug line item from $150 to $1,200. And that was an increase to me leasing AEDs, defibrillators. I wanted to make sure that there was a defibrillator in every single courts facility inside the county. We already had 2 of them in this facility. We had one in the roads department. This is the major buildings. The road department has a lot of people that work in that. But I wanted to make sure that there was a defibrillator, life safety equipment in every single courts facility in the county. So that meant, of course, juvenile detention. That meant the historic courthouse and the annex. And that is serviced every single month and recorded by Centos there, as well as a fully stocked medicine cabinet that's up on the 5th floor that they keep there that any county employee can go to at any time. So that's the rise in that. You see a few various there's like for tires and stuff for trucks, but I tried to keep everything else pretty reasonably and low. If you go to the 3,000s, the other services and charges, Justice Secchi, that's where you see in 3052 the fire and extended coverage jump $250,000 to $550,000 because of this rate increase. If you look back to 2020, that is a $450,000 rate increase. I am hoping that mine is the largest out of all the departments, but you see that large jump right there in the other line item. Going down, you see specifically utilities and electricity. That 50,000 rate increase is because back last year, after we had already worked up the budget, SWEPCO was awarded a 9.5 rate increase across the board to everyone, as well as a 74% fuel usage increase on everybody's bill. And we use a lot of electricity. We do have the solar field, but when I first started here in 2017, that line item right there used to be over $250,000. So the solar field and solar projects are working, but because of this 9.5 rate increase that everyone under SWEPCO has experienced, that's why that one has raised so much. Hope another one that obvious is, of course, the gas and water increases for everyone that in their regular utilities have increased. 3090, the dues and memberships, that's primarily for a service that we use across the county called DocuSign. And then in 3102, the large increase there is due to the human resource software that we added in, of course, there. The good news is in 3108, you can see that we dropped it $5,900. And that's due to 2 properties that were deemed non-public use. We put picnic tables on them and we called them parks, and they are now for public use. So that was a good thing. So that's my 2,000 and my 3,000 line item there. Do you want me to cover the other things now, sir?
Sounds good.
All right. If you look at the very top back in the salary full-time, we're asking, as we did last year, for 2 new maintenance technicians and 2 new janitorial persons. The amount of square footage that we cover and the amount of facilities that we cover with the personnel we cover is well below industry standards to keep up a high level of maintenance and janitorial services. And so that is the reason why we are asking for that, to give them a little bit of, well, to bring the buildings back up to standards that I think we all would agree that we like. The last item is back.
Hold right there. I think Justice Secchi has a question, and it might
Yes,
be
ma'am.
specific to that.
Thank you. Dwight, could you tell me, when you have on personnel, I'm looking at personnel summary, where exactly are you talking? Are you on MNOP or where?
No, ma'am, I am on 1001.
1001.
Yes. The actual numbers aren't in
Okay,
there.
but it doesn't have a breakdown of what you're asking, does it?
No, ma'am, I believe you will be getting one of those.
Okay, so we'll be getting we'll be getting one.
You should have a justification letter
Yeah.
that was handed out this evening when we finished.
That was
those up.
handed out
What-
this evening.
What we're essentially
I apologize,
asking
I
in the 2
haven't
new positions
looked at it.
is about $200,000, $87,119 for janitorial, and $110,035.42 for maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. The other item is on capital very, very quickly, and that's just on vehicles. We have a 2008 Chevy that starts its day at 7 o'clock every morning, and it doesn't stop running till 1 a.m. when janitorial finishes. We are limping it along. Thank you, bro. We are limping it along, and so we desperately need to replace that. In addition, we're asking for one other one if we get the additional personnel that we're requesting, we'll need another vehicle for them to use. Any questions?
Justice Lemming?
Thank you, Chair. Dwight, on the 5005 and 5006, then purchase that, is that the Johnson Controls, the 277, 277, and 222?
Yes, sir, that's the debt service for the Johnson Controls
Is
project.
that 460 still at 460, or has it went up some? And is interest changed?
On that particular one, that's the loan agreement, and there's a amortization that we follow every year that actually started back whenever we signed the contract for that.
Yes, and we paid to get the results of how that's doing, and I've yet to see one since we've started that. How come we don't get them? We pay like $40,000 a year to get that, and we hadn't been able to see it since.
You should be able to get one through the county judge's office, whatever he was able to get you.
You're talking about a report on the performance of the?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We've asked in the past, and we were supposed to have got one in 2022, and for some reason we never did. But,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't have that. We'll work to get you guys that for sure.
Okay.
Any other questions for Director Gonzalez? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the Election Commission. I think I saw Director Price there this evening. Good evening, Director Price. How are you?
Good evening, just fine. Our budget is reflective of a presidential year for 2024, and so it's easiest to compare our budget to years 2022 and 2020. And so we do have a significant increase in our budget. Most of that is due to the expected voter turnout, expected rise in registered voters, and then just the amount of elections that we'll have with the presidential election, a runoff election, and then the general election, and a possible general election runoff for the cities of Fayetteville and Springdale. And so that is what takes up a lot of our personnel services, the increase that you see there. And then our supplies and other services, those are also reflective of the increase of the different items that we need to conduct the election, such as ballot stock, stylists, security needs, ADA needs. Several of our expenses are billable, such as the truck rental, advertisement, Wi-Fi, and all of that uses. So when you do see increases in some of those, just note that we do bill back to the state and then to the cities for certain costs for each election as well.
I'd just call your attention to, I know Director Price is doing a great job of this, but the cyclical elections, at the very bottom, she's given us kind of a breakdown of what's billable. Do you see that in that shaded area there? I thought that was very helpful for me when I was reviewing that budget. I just point that out.
Yes, I based, basically, of an average, we've had a 33%, 38%, an average of 38% billable for 2024. So when we run elections and conduct elections, the state pays for the primary and the primary runoff, the biggest majority of it. And then when we get to the general election, the county pays half. I calculate the cost of the election, the county pays half, and then the cities pay the rest of the election cost based on the number of votes cast in each city. And then the runoff election is 100% billable to the cities that have to conduct a runoff election. And that includes poll worker costs, publications, mileage, gas, Wi-Fi, and those expenses. If anyone has any questions, but I do know that, you know, we're already starting prep work for 2024 this year, and so a a lot of the items that we look at in purchasing for 2024, you know, we see what can we purchase in 2023, but the biggest majority of them, you know, we have to wait until 2024 to purchase. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions for Eric Price? If anybody, too, if I'm trying to spur the horse, but if you just want a few minutes, you can just raise your hand and I'll hold up if you need to finish your analysis. But with that, does anybody have any questions for Director Price about her budget?
Yes, so that is for all of our Wi-Fis that we have to send out to the polling places for each election. And so those are hooked up to our tablets so that our tablets talk to one another. And that's what prevents a voter from going from one polling place to another polling place to try and vote twice. That is a billable expense, and so we turn around and bill that to the state and then to the cities. We also are very fortunate that Prairie Grove Telephone Company provides free Wi-Fi for us in the rural areas where our Wi-Fis will not work. But yes, but that's the cost that Verizon has for us for the usage of those Wi-Fis. It's about $32 per polling place for the Wi-Fi.
I have a quick question. You said that you're expecting turnout to be higher. I'm sure at some point you always expect that in a growing region, but do you have a comparison for the 2024 year versus the 2020 year in terms of numbers or percentages?
Yes. I work off numbers and percentages when I try and do my planning. But basically, we expect about a 65% voter turnout for the year, for the presidential year. And that's what we saw in 2020. And so with those numbers, we would expect to most likely have around 95 to 96,000 votes cast just for the general election. We also have to plan on early vote and election day. We really encourage voters to early vote because we do not have enough actual equipment if everyone waited to vote election day. So one of the things we calculate when we're looking at our budget is how many people do we expect to early vote, how many people do we expect to vote on election day, and that determines the amount of equipment, the amount of supplies I need at sites, and all of that we put together as well.
Great. Thank you, Director Price. I really appreciate that. Next up, we're going to hear from our Planning Department. Director Ada is here this evening.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to give like a brief, as much as I can, a brief introduction to our planning department because most of you maybe they don't know exactly what we do. So I left like a copy, so if you don't hear me well, so it's there. So the planning office, staffed with like 3 employees at the moment, facilitates all land development of areas outside the city limits in Washington County, including lot splits and combinations, property lot line adjustment, other exemptions such as like family splits and mortgage splits, subdivisions and minor subdivisions, and that's the stuff that goes to the planning board, large-scale development, communication towers and antennas. We do floodplain development permitting. We do surveys and civil plan review, plat reviews, 911 address application review before we send them to the 911 office to be assigned. We manage and maintain the public web map, the GIS data, the planning GIS data, and the map request. And we do the zoning, which is like the infamous like conditional use permit that everyone like familiar with. So briefly about the strength of our like planning office, the planning staff and their like positive attitude is a huge plus. We have knowledgeable personnel, our staff, continually striving to learn by seeking out training opportunities, and they ask questions, which is a good thing. Our process and procedures of planning are quite effective compared to some of the neighboring cities and counties. We have transparent communication, not only up the chain, but down, but back down, which is great. We have a great benefit package for retirement plan, health insurance, vacations, and sick leaves. Some of the challenges, state laws does not update us, like the state normally does not update us like when or if a law changes, and like we have to go and look that up when we have like an issue. City planning areas are not following through on annexation, which has become a trend. And most people, like, they call us, says, like, when this is gonna be annexed, what should we do? So, like, we really don't have a timetable for it. So sometimes it's just, it's frustrating. The public's understanding of what planning is or does still a challenge on occasions. Rural land development isn't being reviewed, regulated, and enforced as it should be, some occasions. Procedural change based on ordinances aren't timely, and they are sometimes difficult to coordinate. The budget constraints sometimes for training opportunities and financial limitations does not allow like everyone to take like courses at the same time, so we stagger them like over years. We have a small staff with large number of projects. In addition to that, the level of experience is still like relatively low between like the new employees. Retention rate sometimes is like not as great as we hope, because like the ability to promote wage offered for like workforce competitors and like surrounding cities or like private companies is like higher. One of the opportunities that we have in our like office and the county, our citizens are very open to land development if it's done correctly. The public education and knowledge getting better pertaining to planning process. We keep everything on our website open to the public, and if they have any question when they call us or email us, we provide them with all the answers they need. The neighboring cities and their staff are very helpful, extremely. Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission guidance, we get guidance during the writing of the planning codes and like other local projects when needed, on demand. Support from the state level organization, our jurisdiction, like reviewers, lots of like this departments we deal with within the county and within the city, surrounding city, are very supportive when we ask for like reviews. They are like timely and they respond with like very good comments. Helps us a lot. The public trust, we're building on existing relationship and creating new. And we are being good stewards of tax payers' funds. And that's becoming a trend, which is a good thing. One more thing I need to add about like our department, that Washington County Planning staff plays an essential role in the community and works diligently to facilitate collaboration between multiple county departments to ensure like organized and efficient growth. We're hoping that like our work is being recognized and rewarded. So I'm gonna go over like the increase in the budget. We tried, my staff and I, we tried like to keep everything similar to last year, but some of the stuff like has to increase due to all the increases that happening and the inflation. Line item 2007, fuel, oil, and lubricants is going to increase from 5,000 to 6,000, and that's this increase that accommodates like rising prices of fuel, lube, and like oil filters due to the various ages and models of the three planning department vehicles. We have 3 vehicles that like they're all older like than 10 years. One of them is almost like 23 years. It's like on its last leg. I don't think the battery works on it. Item 3052, the fire and extended coverage, it's going to go to up to $1,000. And planning requests an increase to cover like the fire safety for equipment and travel insurance. Fees, rates, premiums increase at the beginning of the year. Line item 3054, other sundries insurance is going to increase from 50 to 100, and that's basically due to increase in stamp prices and applications fee for notary, slight increase in the requested to cover like warranty bonds, insurances, etc. Line item 3090, dues and membership, it's going to increase from 32,500 to 40,000. Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning and other membership dues, which provided necessary access to information and services, are increasing in response to the growing population of Washington County. And we get like lots of like requests for them to increase our their user membership, and we have to accommodate for that so we can have like our staff like parts of that like membership. The last item, line item is 3102. It's a software support maintenance agreement. It's going to increase from $4,000 to $6,000, and that's basically just like for the increase of like the annual software purchase and maintenance, such as the mapping ArcGIS software like Office Suite, Adobe, and other software that we use, like specific software to allow the office to maintain productivity and functionality. So, any questions?
Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Atta. So you mentioned, and in the handout, I see 3090 dues and memberships. Your
Yes, sir.
requested 2024. You mentioned 40,000, but what I'm looking at here is 35.
That needs to be updated.
Oh, that need to be updated. Yeah, I already gave you a new one. Yeah.
Got it.
We received the new planning dues on Friday.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Justice Dennis?
Thank you, Judge. Good job, but
Thank you, sir.
I think you've sold yourself short on looking at some items. To me, with inflation, with fuel cost, does the whole county get an estimate or a calculation on what to expect for fuel for the coming year? Because, you know, just last month, or just the last few weeks, it's gone up so
60,
much.
60 cents or more.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I'm seeing some of your numbers seem low. I'm not getting on to you for spending too much. I think you're underestimating what it's going to cost.
So, yeah, I mean, last year we had like 5,000 and we did not go over the budget. And this year, like, I just added like $1,000. So my intention, and like that's what we've been thinking, and like I discussed this like with our administration. So we have 3 vehicles, old vehicles. I already contacted like some of the dealership here, like the Ford Lewis Ford and the Chevy dealership. If we can, we have like last year we had 35,000 in capital. It's been approved. We haven't touched them yet. So if we can go ahead like and exchange those cars. So if we can go like ahead like and sell those cars, so we can exchange them and add the capital that we have to buy at least 2 new, relatively new, good vehicles that has like good mileage, good like technology that will last longer. That will like reduce the amount of like lube oil, like almost everything, like in terms of expenses. We don't have like too much money in our parts. And I remember like last year we had to replace like tires on one of the vehicles, and it was like $1,300 out of $1,400 like line item. So I'm trying like to have like modern cars that like will last longer, with less unexpected like expenses. So that's the whole plan. I totally understand. I would love to have it more, but if we can have those vehicles, it might like stay within budget.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Justice Fleming?
Thank you, Chair. Young man,
Yes, sir.
have we, in the budget, looked at, and I know we're rebuilding and reworking the planning commission, have we looked at maybe hiring somebody to enforce the planning stuff? Has that been talked about, or is any of that changing?
Well, it was discussed like last year, but we did not like went into details, because like if you were gonna have like an enforcement officer, from like my knowledge with the city of Fayetteville, you have to have a bond. And I guess the bond is about like $100,000, and you have to have like training and certification. So that was not like discussed this year, but I'm pretty sure that's like in our mind to have like an extra like personnel, or maybe collaborate with like some other departments that they already have the enforcement that we can use it to our advantage.
Well, I think it's time to get the planning board in that direction to, if we're gonna have it, if we're not gonna force it, we just need to get out of it.
I totally understand.
And so I think we need to get you the right tools to work with to make that happen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Other questions for Director Adam? Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
Next up is the comptroller. Comptroller Story.
Good evening again. Whoop, just if you look at the comptroller sheet, somebody had a question? Okay. The primary thing that changed is on line 30, accounting and auditing. We have a required audit every year from an independent accounting firm for our grants program. And Bridget agreed to take that over because it's really more under her purview and responsibility than accounting, than the comptroller department. So that cell H30 is a 0, which is a decrease of $20,000 from our side that will fall, that she's agreed to assume in her budget. Other than that, the primary thing that I've bumped a few things are with respect to a possible finance software feasibility trips, which at the moment I have none planned. I don't even have a software that anyone thinks they like better than what we're using. But I wanted to have that capability there that I would be able to investigate hopefully a less expensive and or better operational finance software than we're currently using. And we are making it work. So other than that, we had the increase in the property insurance coverage, which I didn't really show any additional cost on our side at the moment. Let's see. Yes, I'm sorry, I got the description in the wrong row. It's row 40, going from $200 to $356. Every department shares in that. One thing I'd like to call your attention to is anything that you see on a budget sheet in these columns H, I, or K that is in red is coming from that department's director or official. If you see anything that's green, that is my comment. For instance, I added this year in column I the percentage change for a given row other than just what the total is. For example, row 27, column I shows 5%. That's the change for the total supplies, but you look up above and you can see that it was a 2% change in general supplies and a 14% change in small equipment. Occasionally we have, it's amazing, but we use a lot of staples, processing invoices and stuff, and I've come to recognize the value of having electric staplers. But I've never had to deal with that before, but that's one of the things. I'm not saying I'm planning on buying any additional staples or anything there. I'm just saying I'm finding some very unique issues when you're dealing with heavy paperwork operations. So basically, overall, I only have a negative 2%, but that's only because this $20,000 disappeared off of ours that will show up on grants. And again, I don't anticipate spending any of this, but I'm trying to be cautious and yet frugal and paying attention to the possible need to do some travel looking at some software issues. And so I don't anticipate that, you know, we'll probably put a lot of this back into the general fund. But I just I'd prefer not to have to come back to y'all for a several $100 thing. So these are pretty small numbers with most of the things happening in the county. I also have some responsibility over constables, which is a very small budget. You can look at it right quick if you want to. I know we're trying to move on here. If I can get to it, constable. There we go. That's as I understand it, that's a state requirement. And the constables, we have a $7.50 requirement to pay them. And we only have about 3 right now. So, I mean, that's not even worth really spending any time on. District judges, if you can go to that, using your alpha sort. District court judges. And that number is a required county pro rata to support the district court judges that have their own individual line items in the budget. But the state sent us the same number that we had last year, so I wasn't going to complain about that. The rest of the spreadsheet items that I have are transfers out from the general fund, road fund, recorders, child support, and adult drug court. And that is, in some respects, us providing additional monetary support to some of these areas, small funds or small departments that are don't take in enough revenue to cover their own expenses sometimes. And I'll be working with the treasurer, county treasurer, to get a little firmer grip on those. It's a little too early in the current year for us to be doing that, although he is making a revenue forecast on that. So I'll be working closely with him. I don't anticipate anything out of the norm from what I'm seeing right now. I think that covers most of the thing, or all of the things that I'm responsible for.
Questions for Comptroller Story?
Just so y'all understand, in most private accounting situations, companies, the accounting department handles both revenue and expenses. In a municipality like ourselves, the county treasurer is an elected position, and he is responsible for monitoring and staying on top of all the revenue coming in. The comptroller is primarily responsible for the expense side, but keeping the general ledger that has to be reconciled with the treasurer, okay? So I find that very unusual from my past experience, because I normally having people reconcile bank statements and all that different kinds of things. But it's unusual here, but it also strengthens our internal controls. And being an auditor by my history and my career, I'm very appreciative of that. But primarily, we've got 4 areas that comptroller covers. That's accounts payable, payroll, general ledger, and budget. So that's where my focus generally is, to answer your questions, but I stand available to try to answer any questions that any of you have. And I hope that this new electronic system will give us a great leap forward in efficiency, saving time, and coming up with a better result from the whole process. So I thank you if you don't have any other questions.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Information Technology, Director Baird.
Good evening, everyone. The IT department is an internal services organization that provides desktop computing, printing, and network capabilities. We also support a number of software programs, camera systems, and access security, as well as GIS services related to emergency response in Washington County. We also handle your phone systems and some of your programming for your phones themselves. There's just a couple of items that really move the needle in the IT budget, and they're because of replacement schedule. We're running 10-year-old switchgear, which is how our computers talk to each other through centralized switching. And then also our Microsoft software, we're running Office 2013. So if you look at line item for 2009, the computer equipment, we have the switch replacement, which is $126,000. And if you go to line item 3102, that's where we have the Microsoft Office 2021 suite, and that's almost $167,000. Those two items alone make up the increase of about 38% of the 41% increase in the IT budget. There is good news on the software, though. The Office 2021 suite will save us about 50% over going over the subscription service known as Office 365. So we'll still get Teams with this software. We'll still get the modern software that O365 is equivalent to, but it won't cost as much over a 5 or 10 year span. There's also one other line item that makes a kind of a jump, and that is the 3009 professional services. It goes from 47.5 to 64.5. It was because it was left out of the 2023 budget. The software, well, it was actually a hardware maintenance company, did not bill us for 22, so we did not budget for 23. We actually had to eat it in 23, so we're putting it back in the budget, and that's the delta on that number there. Any questions?
I think the final item is you do have a justification letter for a phone system. Is that correct? Can you run us through that real quick?
I do. If we're going to do it at the 4,000 level, we have two items that we're going to be requesting for. First is $75,000 for redundant servers. We have our primary server room in this building here. We want to duplicate those capabilities for disaster recovery and backup at our South Center facility. So this is to basically double up. It creates what we call a heartbeat type system, where one system feels that the other one's not there anymore, it instantly takes over. It's kind of a nifty piece of software that works in that case, but that means if we were to lose this building for any reason, the south side would pick up all the computing for the rest of the locations in the county. Our other item that we're requesting is $65,000 for the phone system. It's primarily because the software is basically out of service and end of life. So we had three options to choose from: a $65,000 replacement, which is primarily a new software upgrade. We get to keep our handsets that we have on our desks today. The other alternatives are $204,000 and $206,000, so that decision made itself.
Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. The duplicate servers, is that in anticipation of our EOC center? Is that where those would be located? And until that's constructed, where are we putting that on the south campus?
We also have a facility at the building and grounds building as well.
Gotcha.
So we'll create a secondary location so we can also have backups as well as the disaster recovery automatic switch over there as well.
Cool. Thank you.
Other questions for Director Baird? Thank you, sir. Purchasing.
Good evening. What purchasing does is manage all the bids, contracts, purchase orders, cell phones, NP cards. And my budget's pretty simple. I went down in a lot of areas. The only thing that went up significantly is the line item 3054 under other sundry insurance, and it's the AAC risk management. So other than that, I think it's pretty simple. Do you guys have any questions or?
Go ahead. We good? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
One of the several, like the comptroller, several odd and ends budgets fall underneath the county judge. The next one up is the archives and records management. We're not requesting anything for 2024. So I just wanted you guys to have that budget so you could see that there's nothing to be requested there. Justice Koger?
Yeah, well, okay, thank you, Judge. So how is it there's nothing? I mean, who's taking care of that department and everything?
So Miss Mason on Wednesdays goes down and staffs our archives. That's the way it's been set up for a few years now, so that there's a staff person down there. It's part of her job duties. And so what the budget represented in prior years, including last year, was just various things that we thought we might need in terms of supplies. And we're not running into any of that. We haven't had any expectations. We haven't experienced any of that this year, and so we don't foresee needing a budget next year. And we'll continue to staff it in the way we're doing now.
Does that mean there's just one day a week that you can go
Mhm.
in there?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Grants, Dr. Russell? Grants Department.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you, Justices, for giving me just a couple of minutes to talk about grants and our grants program. I have two primary areas of focus in the grants department. The first is to conduct the regular and required monitoring and reporting that goes along with all of the existing state and federal grants that we have. There are numerous that Washington County has already been blessed with and benefits from. They serve a wide range of the departments, touch many areas of county service, building and grounds, law enforcement, including the Washington County Sheriff's Department, court security, circuit court 4 and the drug court and veterans treatment courts, juvenile court, the juvenile detention center, Department of Emergency Management. All those areas, just to name some of them, have some type of grant funding, at least one source that comes through grants department. We also are responding right now. I'm also responding right now to the needs of the auditor. We have that independent auditor that Comptroller Story was talking about. They're on site now, or actually off site, but working on our accounts. We're required to have that federal audit, because we have federal funds. They only audit the federal funds, but it's a requirement every year. So that money also speaks to the budget piece that you'll see. So those responsibilities take a great deal of time and a lot of focus, but even so, I've been vigorously chasing and seeking new grant funding for the county and for the citizens of Washington County. For example, we are currently waiting on some award notices. Just to name a few, we've got projects related to bridges, an intersection improvement, law enforcement equipment, the establishment of the mental health diversionary court with Judge Stevenson, and an energy conservation resources as well. So just a wide range of activities going on. You will notice in our budget, there's really only one change of note, and that's the line item that Judge Comptroller Story mentioned about the grant, funding the audit out of the grants department versus coming out of the comptroller's section. That's really all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Dr. Russell.
Thank you.
Next up, Human Resources. Director Burchett.
Good evening, everyone. The HR staff, as many of you may know, is comprised of 4 employees located at the courthouse and 2 employees located at the sheriff's office. Our current total workforce size for full-time employees is currently 615, with a part-time workforce of 79 and a seasonal workforce of 825. The total current active employee count is 1,519. Why is this so significant, you may be asking yourself? We are one of the 3 largest counties in Arkansas, but the only one of the 3 that do not have an HR software solution. If we want to be the model county in the state, this is one more way for you as the Quorum Court to help us achieve that goal. With that being said, the HR department's main new request for 2024 budget is the purchase of a human capital management system, more commonly referred to as an HCM software. There are many benefits to having an HCM software within the county. The main purpose of the software such as this is to aid in maintaining compliance and consistency with our HR policies and procedures countywide. This software will replace some of the existing softwares that the HR department has been using for many years, thereby eliminating our current inefficient patchwork of software and storage solutions and allowing for a streamlined management of data. An HCM software is designed to provide the employee with a supportive employment experience from hire to separation. From the administrative support aspect, the software is designed to lessen time spent on sometimes daunting HR procedures and to provide transparency between all levels within the workforce. The selected company, UKG, has provided the county with a competitive quote based on Omnia Cooperative Purchasing Agreement with the state of Arkansas. The pricing will remain in effect for 5 years at this cost based on that agreement. Attached, you will find a breakdown of costs by department and elected official. As you go through the various personnel budgets, you will see that many of the county departments have already added the cost of this request into their budget. Those that have not total to about $27,000. The reasoning behind distributing the cost across all funding sources was done to 1, aid in alleviating the general fund, and 2, to provide all the elected officials the option of covering their portion within an alternate funding source. Throughout this process, there have been many discussions leading up to this request with myself and the entire Washington County management team. We all see the value in having a solution such as this for our workforce, and we hope that each of you will as well. The breakdown is based on a number of budgeted positions for full-time and part-time employees at the rate of $13.15 per employee per month annually. For the first year, there is an implementation fee that is also shared between all the departments. The total cost of the one-time implementation fee is $51,592.50. I realize that with all the county's budget constraints, this may seem like a lot to put forth. However, the value of this type of solution will bring to the county will be an integral part in moving forward together as one when it pertains to personnel-related disciplines. The selected vendor, UKG, assisted with providing Washington County with a thorough value assessment that was very eye-opening. Based on the assessment, the implementation of a solution like UKG would provide an annual labor savings for Washington County of approximately $427,000 a year. There were many parameters that were used to determine the savings, which are all included in the report provided within your packets. If you have questions about anything included within the report, please let me know and I would be more than happy to discuss it further with each of you. I would like to say, please do not be misled by the assessment in that the savings do not come from the elimination of personnel, but from the time savings and efficiency of daily processing tasks across all levels of the organization. I believe that one of the most valuable areas that this solution will shift is the way in which we carry out recruitment and onboarding. Thank you for your consideration. We hope that you agree that this is a great option. Another fund that the HR department maintains is the Washington County Self-Insured Health Fund. What is a self-insured health fund? A self-insured health fund is distinct in that the employer uses their revenue to cover the employee's medical claims. The 2024 budget for our health fund has not only funding from county flowing into it, but also from employee health premiums. In order to budget this fund, we rely on our insurance carrier rates. One of those rates that dictates the funding needs is the excess loss coverage. Unfortunately, at this time, those rates are not in for the next year. Typically, those will be available in September. Based on those rates, there may be some adjustments to the budget in the near future to accommodate those potential rate changes. So please be on the lookout for those in the coming months. The HR department has made great strides over the past year and a half by working towards becoming paperless, automating our I-9 services, building relationships with the entire workforce through our employee recognition program, and redesigning our benefit programs in the county. However, none of this would have been possible without the help of all of you. We want you to know that the HR department is engaged and willing to guide the vision of the county to the next stage of becoming the best place to work in the state. Thank you again, and please feel free to reach out to me at any time through this process with questions that you may have.
What Director Burchett was talking about too is that secondary budget that I was gonna have her present, the employee insurance fund, which is 1,002,0125, and those figures are not available yet. So that's one that we'll wanna watch as we get updated throughout the process. Two things I'd like to say is I really appreciate the cooperation of all the elected officials and department heads to try to help us budget for this new software, and being open to that. I think it's gonna bring us some good things. One thing primarily that's been kind of a new problem for us as a county as we've become more attractive as an employer is that we're a bottleneck in HR on onboarding. And so sometimes that can be frustrating when you've got a good, talented candidate and you're ready to get them started, and we have only so many slots to get these people through in-service, if you will, and get them processed. And so I think this will greatly help us in that regard too. Justice Lyons?
Thank you, Judge. I think you said that the study on the savings was in the packet? Was it supposed to be in this packet?
It's not in your paper packet.
I'm sorry, I don't think it was included in that packet. We're gonna send that out to you guys in an email because it's about
That's fine.
50
Thank you. I
pages,
just
50
making sure I'm
pages
not-
long.
Making sure I didn't miss it. Thank you.
We made a tough decision this
I
afternoon.
apologize. I thought it was an electronic packet when I wrote this, so I apologize. Yeah.
I apologize. I will own that decision. Yeah. I got you. Any questions for Director Burchett? Justice Coger?
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Burchett, I just have a question, and maybe you went over it and I missed it, but what is the total cost? Is it the 170,731?
Yes, for the first year. That includes the $51,005 implementation cost. And then every year after that, for the remaining 4 years, it'd be $119,139. And that is contingent on the workforce not increasing and staying about where the quote was. Now, if we have additional positions and departments that get added into budget, then that could impact that number because it's based on your active employee count. So.
Okay. One more thing, on line number 3009, other professional services. Am I on the wrong one? No?
I just don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry.
You're in the
Yeah,
correct
go ahead.
one. Your 3009 line item, other professional services, increased from 29,516 to 35,000.
35,000, okay. So actually, that number, that is the 29,000, that number is reflective of through this budget year, I've transferred and done line item transfers from that number to cover other expenses and other line items. So the original budgeted amount for 2023 was 35,000. So that actually did not experience a change in that line item for that budget.
But what does it cover?
What does it cover? So other professional services typically covers any contracted services. So all of our I-9s get paid out of that. We have a contracted service with an outside live auditing service. And so it's $5 per I-9. And then we also have the annual training included in that quoted cost, as well as live auditing, where they're going into the electronic system, these individuals from that company, and making sure that the staff is completing the I-9 and entering in the fields and the data that the federal government requires in the appropriate manner.
Okay, I don't know what an I-9 is.
Oh, I'm sorry. An I-9 is an employment eligibility document that says that you are who you say you are and that you're legally allowed to work in the United States. So if you've worked for an employer with 50 or more employees, typically you're going to have to have filled out an I-9 if you were hired after 1986.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And I do have one more question, I'm sorry. On line 3093, miscellaneous law enforcement.
So, yes, so those are background checks and drug screens. So that's onboarding cost.
Okay, that's good. That's all I have. Thank you.
Justice Rios Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. I apologize for asking this, but on the software that you were talking about, can you give just a real more simplified kind of version of what does it do exactly?
Okay, so basically the software is for every employee, individual that works for the county will enter and access the software, and they'll have different like security access features. But essentially, as a new hire, you'll come in when you apply for a job at the county. That application, if you're selected for hire, the information that you enter on your application will flow into this HR system. And then when we go to onboard, we're not having to do a lot of data entry that we're having to do now. So it's pulling all that information from the application, it's flowing into their onboarding package, and then we're in HR able to set up their onboarding, training, whether it be different videos. We can even customize it for the department and put, like right now we have some departments that do their own onboarding in addition to what HR does. And so we'll actually be able to combine all that into this one system, as well as it tracks all the documents. So all employee personnel files are in this software. So as the workflow goes for forms, electronic forms that are filled out, it's then filed into the personnel file. And so there's no more scanning, no more storing it in like a Word, Windows folder, anything like that. It's all in one place. It's housed in one spot. We're able to assign retention dates as well to documents. And so it helps us maintain those records as well. And then it also has time and attendance in it as well for payroll.
Okay.
So all of our employee accruals would be in it. So vacation, sick, whatever it would be housed in this. It's a one-stop shop is the way that these softwares are designed. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And then what line item is that under in here?
In
Or
my
is
budget, it would be
is
under
it
the 3102, I believe.
3102, okay.
Yeah,
That
and
one
that's
line
just for
item.
my portion, like for my department.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that's split among.
Yeah, I have a
different-
breakdown. It'll be in y'all's larger packets, I believe, your electronic packets. And there's a by department breakdown, and it'll show you how much should be in the 3102 for each of the departments.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
Justice Lyons?
So question, does what you just explained means as a new employee, you would not have to fill out the same information across multiple forms, which is what occurs today?
That is correct.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
And then this goes into those of you that saw the answer from the comptroller to my question. When I saw that across multiple budgets, that the increase in software support seemed extravagant based on my experience in the IT world. But because we're purchasing a new system and that use of that system is being allocated out is in that line item for every one of these budgets, is my understanding, is the reason that looks so extravagant. So that helps.
Good discussion. Any other questions or comments for Director Burchett? Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you all.
County Attorney? Good evening, Counselor Lester.
Good evening. All right. Well, business is booming in the county attorney's office. We've seen an increase in litigation just across the board, as well as any time that you've got a county growing like we do. There's just a lot of things that come up. And so, as you're aware, we recently added or re-added a deputy county attorney. Unlike before, when we had a deputy county attorney, we also had an empty chief of staff position. Therefore, we had a computer and desk and a place. This time we have a chief of staff fully staffed, and so we've had to purchase some things to kind of get the deputy county attorney up and running the way that she needs to. And so I added some items in my I've moved some money kind of in supplies and added a few things. Computer IT equipment, I added a line item just based on what we've done. I hope that we don't have to purchase anything else. But in the event that we do, I'd rather be able to do that than have to come and ask for money and wait should something be needed on that. As you can see, I did increase my other professional services. That's the money that we use to hire outside counsel, to pay for court reporters. With the increase in litigation, I will probably have to come back to you later in this year to ask for an increase in that line item, given all that's going on. I will state this: it is our policy here at the county to vigorously defend our position, and we intend to do that. And that means whatever we have to do in doing that. So I anticipate that'll go up. Hopefully, I mean, I'd be happy next year if we didn't have to touch those funds, but unfortunately, you know, it's one of those things that we have to do. My dues and membership line item went up. Our Westlaw amount, I got those today, as a matter of fact. That was pretty much spot on, about $100 a month a person to keep the same service that we have. And so that would cover that. Little increases here and there as we have 2 people now traveling. One of the things that we have when it comes to education, there's just not anything in the state really. We're required as attorneys to continue our education just as CPAs are, law enforcement is, that sort of thing. But because we're a small state, there's not a lot here in Arkansas. If we go to a CLE to get attorney hours, they're typically on subjects that have nothing to do with county government. And so we've been trying to find things that actually, when we're getting those educational hours, that actually benefit us. And I'm actually working with the AAC to get something going for all the county attorneys, even, you know, most of them are part-time, or they are prosecutors, to kind of have something where we can all teach each other things that we're seeing. But until we get there, we still have to travel and go places to get those hours. So that's basically it. There's not really an add. The personnel line item went up due to an increase that you approved earlier this year, which you'll see is the increase total overall, the $12,047. But other than that, even though we've moved some money around in some different places, the budget has remained relatively flat.
Justice Taylor?
Thank you, Judge. Counselor, what is special legal on item 3005?
The special legal line item is what we use to pay for our FINS attorneys.
FINS attorneys are hired by Washington County for Washington County Court.
Right. In Washington County, the county pays for our Family and Needy Services attorneys. We have 2 of them.
Is that standard or not really across other counties, or do you know?
I don't believe it's I mean, for the most part, those duties, they're in juvenile court and they're handled by the public defender's office. Washington County, as well as Madison County, hire their own. Madison County actually pays theirs hourly, and they have to turn in an invoice every month. Washington County pays theirs a flat fee.
Is that a contracted position?
It's a contracted position.
And there's 2 of them?
There are 2 of them. We have 1 for each division of juvenile court.
I see. Huh. Okay. And then you said the other professional services, the doubling is just your anticipation of having to.
Well, whenever there's a
litigation
lawsuit,
costs.
especially when there's a lawsuit filed that I'm named in, whether there's a factual basis for that or not, I cannot represent the county.
Right.
And so we've had to hire outside counsel because of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Justice Lyons?
So I think you stated that other professional services, you expected to have to come back and ask for more
For this year, correct.
for 2023.
For 2023.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Right. I'm hoping not, and hopefully we don't spend any of that. As you can see, if you look back from 2020, 2021, 2022, there was already $10,000 that had already been appropriated since I became the county attorney. And you can see we used $12,000 of that in 2020. We used about $5,500, $5,600 in 2021, and then only almost about $2,000 last year. And so the money that's not used there just clearly goes back.
So instead of the 10,000 that's budgeted, you're saying before the end of this year, you're going to have back, that's going to increase?
Right, that's correct.
Closer to the 20,000 you're budgeting
Most
next
likely,
year.
yes.
Okay, I misunderstood what you said. Thank you.
That's right.
Other questions for Counselor Lester? Justice Coger?
Yes, thank you, Judge. Mr. Lester, I have a question about that, other professional services. How, is that like, do we pay a deductible to the Arkansas Association of Counties? I mean, when you have to hire an outside attorney? Is that?
No, the Association of Counties doesn't provide outside counsel. They don't provide attorneys. They provide attorneys for the Risk Management Fund, which are 1983 federal claims, or if there is some extenuating claim that could come back on liability. But for the most part, those are the only claims that the Risk Management Fund is very specific about what it will and what it will not provide representation for.
Okay. One other question on line 3098, judgments and damages. Last year it was 25,000. There's nothing there for this year? I mean, if I'm reading that correctly.
That's correct. Because we don't typically pay a judgment. That was, the quorum court voted to settle a case instead of taking it on to court.
Okay, I remember that.
And so that's kind of one of those things that if that happens, we would have to get quorum court approval anyways in order to enter a settlement. So there's no point in budgeting any funds for that. But the other professional services, if something comes up, let's say we get a judgment on a Thursday of quorum court, it's a 30-day process for me to come back in and ask you for money so that we can appeal something. We only have a 30-day window to file a notice of appeal. And so there are times that you know, time is of the essence, and coming back in or calling a special meeting that then costs the county an additional $10,000 is not cost effective. And so this is to allow us to go ahead and move forward in a timely manner with those cases. And we have a couple of appeals that will be filed in the forthcoming months.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions for Counselor Lester? Justice Taylor, the fellow
Thanks.
attorney?
What's the difference in food and meals?
So meals are the meals that you see on all of these, meals and lodging, that all has associated with travel.
Right.
The food is not associated, is a non-travel. So what we do, we have often the county judge's office, our directors get together and we meet. And so we've started dividing that up by budgets because we have a working lunch where no one leaves. We stay, we have a couple of hours that we spend together that we are working and learning and talking about things that are going on. And so that's why I added, I've been having to pull money in order to help contribute to that. So I just went ahead and added that so that it's there.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
With that, we're down to the criminal justice coordinator budget. We have submitted a zero budget this year. I have eliminated that position and have no plans to rehire it. So that position, salary, and materials will not be funded for 2024. Next up, County Communications, Director Sowers.
Good evening. So we are still a very, very young department. Have some great stuff. We've actually grown across our social media. We've seen a 10% growth. So that helps in the PIO aspect of this department. Also created new Instagram and Twitter accounts in order to further reach. We have had great success fostering great working relationships with all county departments, local municipalities, law enforcement safety agencies, Northwest Arkansas media and industry. We discussed it earlier. We held one of the most successful traveling exhibits in the county's history with Tunnels to Towers, seeing approximately 5,300 visitors in their time here. And with the money raised, we were able to donate approximately another 8,000 to that organization on top of hosting them in the county with no cost to the Washington County taxpayer. If you look at our departmental budget for next year, it's only slightly increasing for the 2024 year. The main reasoning behind that is because we were on a half-year budget from the time of creation of the department, and we're just pushing it out to a full-year budget. Only added expense really was an advertising line to cover PR and marketing costs to help promote events across the county.
Justice Rio Stafford?
Just out of curiosity, what's the clothing and uniforms line item?
So when I will be spending some time on camera, so I just got things that have the county seal that especially also after our visit to the EOC, it's helpful, and they told us this while we were in Little Rock, it's helpful that you are wearing something that says communications director, county judge, that the media can find you and easily identify you when they are in an emergency situation trying to talk to people.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Another interesting budget that we oversee is the county health budget. This is our contribution to our county health initiatives. That budget is, let me make sure I can get here. County health, sorry. That budget is received, submitted by Robin Thomas, who's the state health administrator in our building. There were no changes in this budget for 2023 to 2024. If we have specific questions, we can reach out to Ms. Thomas and get them answered. Item number 15 is the ambulance service. This is our contribution as a county to make us whole with Central EMS. This is the one that we're going to see a staggering increase in. We did not have this amount. Looks like it's up on this amount. It did on your online budgets. It might not be filled in, but that is going from $830,000 to $1.4 million. You have it on yours? Okay, I might be working off an old worksheet. So that was some of what we discussed a month or so ago about just the cost of Central going way up. So, Animal Shelter, Director Ledgerwood.
Good evening, Angela Ledgerwood, Animal Shelter. Just to give you a quick overview of what we do, Washington County Animal Shelter assists county citizens of unincorporated areas of Washington County, so outside the city limits of Fayetteville, outside the city limits of Springdale, with unwanted, stray, and lost dogs and cats. We only take in dogs and cats. Every animal entering the animal shelter is a direct result of a citizen request. No animal comes to us just because somebody's driving along and decides to pick it up. Animal control gets a call, we get a call from a citizen, that we're helping our citizens by taking in these animals. We are an open admission shelter. That means we don't cherry pick the animals that come our way. We take healthy, friendly animals, but we also take sick, debilitated, dangerous animals, and public safety is our primary concern. We offer a variety of services to county citizens. In addition to sheltering pets, we house the low-cost spay-neuter program for low-income residents. We offer TNR services as well as microchipping. Our mission is to educate the citizens of Washington County on responsible pet ownership and, of course, advocate for the control of the pet population through spay and neuter. We're on track to assist roughly 20,000 citizens this year, resulting in over 2,000 animals coming in through our doors. So it just gives you a little bit of an idea of what we do. My budget is pretty cut and dry. I had a few reductions in personnel, but we'll kind of move that around. As far as supplies and services, basically just the cost of inflation is all I'm asking is an increase. So you will see, just like everybody, the insurance line items, took a little jump there. Let's see, the new HCM software in line item 3102, you see an increase there. But overall, the average cost of doing business is all I'm asking for is an increase.
Justice Fleming?
Your budget was 692 and 20, it looks like, and now it's going to be 936, 233. Judge, I just want to say that's kind of, I know it's crazy that our ambulance service that takes care of all of the humans in Washington County was 900,000, and our animal shelter is 900,000. That's crazy to invest that much money in that, but that's what the citizens want. But that's where our ambulance service is a lot more important than our animal shelter, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Justice Simons?
Thank you, Chair. Other professional services, what all falls under that? Is that contracted out to other veterinarians? And things like
Veterinary contracts, we pay for any kind of labor that is needed for all of our equipment, our medical equipment, things of that nature. We have to stay compliant, and so anything, we have a regiment every other year where we have certain machines serviced, and that will be paid out of that line item as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Oh, Justice Coger?
Thank you very much. I just want to say I appreciate what you do at the animal shelter. I know that you take good care of our animals, and I appreciate it. I think you're doing an amazing job with this budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Justice Dennis?
I see a few things that you're kind of short on. The fuel's another one. Everybody's coming flat across on fuel, and fuel's going just like that. So I'm not getting on to you. I'm just saying you should up your fuel so that you don't have to come back and ask for more.
Well, I looked at that, and I'll tell you, the reason that didn't take a drastic hike is the primary reason that we use fuel is to transport animals out of state. Unfortunately, those transports are slowing way down. So where in previous years we might have taken 2 or 3, sometimes 4 a month, we're doing 1, maybe 2 if we're lucky. So our usage is going to be way down because we just don't have the opportunity to transport as many animals.
Okay, but I thought you also went and picked them up.
No,
No?
no, we do not. That
who picks
happens
them
through
up?
animal control,
Sheriff?
through the sheriff's department. Yes, sir.
Okay, so sheriff needs to increase. Thank you.
Director Ledgerwood, would you like to go over the animal shelter projects budget too, real quick?
Absolutely. All right, so the animal shelter is perhaps unique, I don't know. We have, a lot of people love to give money to the animal shelter, right? I mean, everybody loves animals, maybe not everyone, but most people. And they want to give money, okay? So what we have, some people will come in and say, you know what, here's $100, let's put this towards the animal shelter. That goes into general fund. Others will come in and say, I don't want to support the animal shelter. I want to do something above and beyond that goes directly to the animals. That's where the special projects fund was created. And so all of the money that comes into that fund is donated specifically for a special project. And so that goes into the special projects fund. Once we get enough money to complete whatever special project we're doing, then we can get it appropriated back. And that's what we're asking for next year. That particular project is to rectify a couple of things. One, it's going to drastically decrease the disease spread down at the shelter. We're going to turf all of the outside kennel runs. But in addition to that, dogs, of course, run. And when they do, the grass goes away and the dust picks up, and our intake valve for our air handler is right outside, right where the kennel runs are. And so what we're seeing is our air handler is having to be, the filters and everything have to be changed much more often. So we're hoping to alleviate that problem, which is a cost-saving thing, in addition to maybe prolonging the life of a very expensive piece of equipment. And the dogs will benefit from it as well.
Questions for Director Ledgerwood? More questions? Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Next up, the Juvenile Detention Center, Director Tinsley. Director Tinsley, why don't you take a moment too and introduce your companion here, because I think that name is world famous, but people might put a face with it this time.
Absolutely, Judge. I have with me our Assistant Director, Mr. Kendrick Sexton. He's been with the county 19 years now. He is the heartbeat of JDC. Anytime that I'm having difficulty, I seek out his knowledge, and I'm very happy to have him on board with me during this journey. Excuse me, he's taught me everything I've known since I started in 2014 with JDC, and I owe a lot of my success to him. So.
Great, wonderful.
Just to give an overview of the JDC, we are a 36-bed facility that opened up back in 2000 on the south side of Fayetteville. As of right now, we have 27 residents that we can hold at capacity due to the pandemic and the post-pandemic. We do not hold juveniles in the same room. We do have 9 rooms with double beds, but we will only put 1 resident in that room. We currently have 5 juveniles at our facility. We've been averaging about 13 residents per day since January to July. We had a total of 197 admits from January to July of this year. The average stay has been 14 days, with the average age being around 15. We have 19 total staff with 2 social workers, so that's a total of 21. Our social work department is very good. They do all the court order assessments that Judge Zimmerman and Judge Warren will have them do. They also do therapy sessions with the residents that struggle with mental health and related issues. We do have 3 teachers from Fayetteville High that we contract with on the school calendar, and I want to just brag on them briefly that this past school year, from 2022 to 2023, we had 110 credits that the juveniles earned while they were out at our JDC. This summer, they earned 10.5 credits as well. We currently have 15 staff members. We are 4 down, so we've made some success with getting our numbers back up and running the facility. I think at one point in time, we had 6 prior to me coming back, and with the help of Mr. Sexton, we're seeing much success, and I'm very proud.
Awesome. That's awesome.
So when we look at our budget, not too much sticks out. It's just the 2005 line item for food with the rising prices of groceries and inflation. We're just asking to bump that up just a little bit. And our 3009 professional services, we contract with the Fayetteville School District, and with our memo of understanding, we pay a 15% percentage of their salary. Now, this has went up since the teachers of Arkansas have been given a raise and a bonus. So this year alone, we paid $35,525 to 3 school teachers. And so that's nothing we can do about that. The kids must go to school 8 hours a day, and we do understand that, so we want to make sure that they are getting their education, which is through Odysseyware, but I think, Ms. Sookie, that it's changed to Edgenuity now, I believe, and the school teachers will be getting trained on that, I believe, tomorrow, from my understanding. Yes, ma'am. Also, in our 3102 line, we doubled that just because we use a system with Division III called Right Track, and that's how we do our intakes, and we're able to track things in our social work department and the juvenile probation officers of Division III. That's how we communicate with one another, and that's how we take pictures of children and all of this that we all use. And so we pay a portion of that, and Division III will pay the portion of that subscription on a yearly basis.
Questions for Director Tinsley? Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Appreciate you guys. Department of Emergency Management, Director Luther is, oh, okay. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Judge. Thank you. Thank you all. John Luther, I represent the Emergency Management Department. I know I've visited with many of you, either outside the court or certainly here at the court, and so I feel you're probably familiar with what we do. Basically, to sum it up, preparedness and response to non-day-to-day crisis and/or disaster. And so, without belaboring that, I'll go right into our budget. If you look at our budget, the 0500, I have, I think, 4 total to go over with you. The 0500 budget, we had a decrease in, I believe, 7 line items. We had an increase in 2. The increase in one of those, which is 3009 professional services, that was because some of the work that was done in another line item was moved to that one. So it's not new money, it's just a reallocation from one line item to the other. And then the line that did go up substantially is related to the fire and extended coverage that everybody's heard a lot about tonight. If there's any questions on that particular 0500 budget, I'll be glad to answer those if anything is there. Give you a moment to look at it. Okay. We are asking for a position in that office. It's a new position that we hope to have in the next year. We're down 1 position now. The last time we added a position was about 15 years ago. Obviously, the responsibilities of our office have grown tremendously over that many years, and so there's a justification letter in your packet as to what the expectations of that position would be and the work that we would have that person do. And I know there'll be information on that at a later time.
Justice Real Stafford?
Thank you, Judge. On the tower lease, can you tell us more about that? Who owns that tower?
Yes, that is the towers that the new radio system, RF equipment, where it's located. Those are leased sites where the tower site itself, we have access to that. There's a facility provided with all the appropriate grounding and dual air conditioners and all the things related to, basically the new radio system is highly computer-based. So all those things have to have an environment where they work well. And then there's generator, propane, maintenance, and all those things related to maintaining an actual tower site, like a cell site that you would see or something like that. So thankfully with the lease, we didn't have to invest even many, many more dollars in building the sites needed to put together the new radio system.
How many of those are there?
Ma'am?
How many of those are there?
There are 4, let's see, Hazel, Winslow, Hale Mountain, Dinsmore. There are 5 sites with equipment on them
Okay.
that are involved in that lease. There are many more in the overall project, and so that's why I was trying to see which one was which. Yeah.
Gotcha. And are they all owned by one entity or?
This particular group of towers is owned by a local vendor here,
Okay.
Smith Two-Way Communications. They're a longtime radio service provider in our county, I think going on close to 100 years now. And they have sites throughout the state. And thankfully, we've used their tower sites before in the past, and they have a good business where really it takes the monkey off our back to have to figure out how to maintain towers, all the liabilities, maintenance, and things that go along with that. That's what they do, and so it was a really
Okay.
good thing for us.
And are those towers just exclusive to us, or are we sharing them with other?
No, in fact,
Okay.
like the Dinsmore Trail site, Fayetteville, City of Fayetteville was already there.
Okay.
And now we're partnering with them, obviously, and so there's some combining of resources there, but they're there. And then in some cases, there are cellular carriers on those sites. And so they're very nice compounds. They're secure. Again, the buildings are built to typically the cellular carriers' standards, which are great, as you can imagine, because the investment that they make at those locations for each one, and we're really thankful to have access to those. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay.
Questions on that budget? Let's skip around a little bit. I know you got a guest here that's gonna, and I don't wanna put him off anymore, but let's go to the emergency 911 fund budget real quick, if you're okay with that.
Sure. Basically, no changes there. What we anticipate for the 501 budget, and that's basically a budget that is another emergency. That's the life we live, isn't it? We don't know when they come in, and we just go when they do. Yeah. That's kind of a little picture of our life. That's awesome.
There you go.
The 911 budget is basically monies that come in on the 911 tax that the county implemented back, I guess, the 80s, before I started helping in that regard. That's what those dollars go to. It is not in the general fund. It's a budget that we use to do the 911 system. And to update you all, the new 911 system that was provided to the county has been completed and is installed. It is in use in 2 of our PSAPs. It will soon be in use with Central EMS and the Sheriff's Office PSAPs as soon as we move those 2 parties into the Joint Communication Center at the Sheriff's Office, which is within the next few weeks. And so they'll go live with the new system there. But anyway, that's been very successful, and we're excited, and it's next generation 911, so there'll be a lot of advantages that we have not had in the past. So, yeah. But that budget, we anticipate some savings over the next few years, because some of the costs associated with 911, due to changes at the state level, those costs should go down to us. So we're hoping to see some savings there. It's kind of a catch-22. They just stay in the budget, but we don't have to spend them, so that's good. Yep.
And then let's switch and talk real quick about the county judge's emergency budget.
Yes, sir.
I want the quorum court to understand that, and I believe historically this has been $75,000. Looks like we need to enter a total there. We're behind there a little bit. I really want to just alert this to you guys. What this fund would be used for is if we had an emergency and the county judge declares an emergency, it's funds that I have access to respond to that emergency until you ladies and gentlemen could be assembled to give more money. And so we've had some debate about this. Is $75,000 enough? I don't know. I'm looking for input on that from you guys. I really want to stress that these funds would only be used in the event of an emergency. And so what figure do we want that to be to respond, that kind of thing? Justice Fleming?
Well, I thought the last judge had it at 275,000 or something like that. I think if you had a budget of emergency funds like $300,000 or $400,000, we could be fixing 3 bridges that's washed out in Cincinnati, Arkansas. That's been a year and a half, and people's been gnawing on my tail about.
I think you'd be a little bit short even at that.
Well, you
amount.
would, but I mean, box culverts, and it could be fixed.
Yeah.
We
and
can do
while-
more than what we've done.
While I understand your argument there, I don't think that's a very comparable situation. We would get you guys assembled back before we replace the whole bridge. This would be strictly emergency response and any kind of funds we'd need for that.
And I think, Judge, one thing you and I talked about to reassure the court is this is not monies that are used for anything else. And if they're not used, which we hope they are not, they're available for the next year, or certainly the court could appropriate them for a different type of emergency if it came up. So there's not really a risk that follows them. There's just a risk that the judge doesn't have access to help the citizens in the time of need if he is faced with that.
Justice Secchi?
Thank you, Judge. Just to put this in context, I do believe the $75,000 was set either in 2009 or before then. So you can see how long this $75,000, I guess, standard has been in that budget. We're 2023, and I'd like the court to consider increasing it. It's always good to have money in savings than to wish you had it during a disaster. And like you said, it's in the event something happens, you don't have to convene the quorum court to appropriate funds. And in an emergency, you need it.
Justice Dennis?
Thank you, Judge. Yeah, I believe that you and John have thought about it more than we have, but it seems very small to me. I was watching the weather, just happened to turn it on before it came. And, some of the tornadoes that are hitting the areas, and not necessarily our area, and I've lived here a long time and never been in a tornado, but at the same time, when it hits, we need to trust you that you have it there right then and can go with it. So I think you ought to double that easily, because I think that's very small for an emergency. And if that's what we're using it for. And I've seen been on court where you can't always get in here to help you make a decision. You know, otherwise, well, you can convene us and say, all right, everybody come, and we gotta have a quorum court meeting, emergency. But at the same time, if there's an emergency going on, a lot of times you can't get in. And so you might not even be able to get a quorum in here to take care of it. So I think you gotta be good stewards and say, no, this is not enough. And that's what I would say. Thank you.
Justice Ecke?
One last comment. In my opinion, Director Luther, you and the judge are out there and you're hands-on. You would have a better understanding and knowledge of how much this budget really needs to be. What is practical? $75,000 really isn't practical, not today. So I would like for y'all to submit a number rather than us guess of how much you need. Thank you.
Justice Rios Stafford?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'm fine with increasing this. I'm also wondering if at some point in the distant past, has the quorum court passed some ordinance or something governing the use of this fund, or what exactly constitutes an emergency, or how it's defined?
Go ahead, Director Luther.
When the fund was set up, it was in response to the Cincinnati tornado. The county's hands were tied in some areas, and the county was unable to help the citizens as quickly as they would have liked to. I think this was obviously in reaction to that. And my memory serves, it was set up so that the funds could only be used if it was a publicly declared state of emergency by the county judge to the state of Arkansas, to the governor, so that it was very transparent. It was an actual declared emergency. And I think at that time, everyone felt that was certainly enough to kind of restrict the funds to be used for anything else.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay. And, yeah, I agree with what JP Ecke was saying. Come up with a number more educated than probably we would have just throwing something out.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
Hearing the sentiment of the court, Director Luther and I will get together and come up with a figure that we think is pretty appropriate. We'll bring that back in front of you guys before we close out the budget process. Is it good? With that, you want to bring up Chief Coker for the
We certainly
fire
can.
departments?
Yes. He was hoping I wouldn't put him on the spot.
We won't let him get away.
Here, you can have my chair, Chief.
This is Mr. Chris Coker. He's a fire chief, but he's also the president of the Rural Fire Association. So we fund them, we support their efforts, and he's here to go over the fire department's budget, which will be 0502. Chief Coker?
Okay, thank you, Judge. Thank you, Court. And you did bring me up with that glasses, so.
Yep, that number is 30,000 is the increase,
Yep.
1,270,000.
Okay, so it looks like an increase for 2024 of 30,000, which would make the total budget 127,0700. And a lot of that increase is due to the fuel, equipment costs, supplies, and of course, insurance, like we've been talking all night. The inflation is costing us out in the county just as much as it does everywhere, so. That's the increase for that. Is there any questions on it?
No, I think that does great. We just wanted somebody to speak to it. And I will say that last year, we upped our funding of the rural fire departments to a much more appropriate number, and I think this just keeps us on that track to adjust it every year.
Yes.
Is my sentiment as the county judge.
All the support from the court and the judge is much appreciated amongst the rural association.
Any questions for Chief Coker? Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
you all.
I think that does it. I appreciate you, Director Luther. Environmental Affairs, Director Dykes. Oh, I'm getting them. I messed up. I'm so sorry. Mr. Coleman, would you like to come up? I'm so sorry. I'm getting my people mixed up.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Andrew Coleman, Environmental Affairs. Basically, we're a small department. We have 2 full-time environmental officers commissioned by the state of Arkansas. We have citation writing ability to enforce state solid waste, water, and air regulations. Sure. I'll get a little closer. Currently, we work off a complaint basis. If someone submits a complaint, our office will go out and investigate it, determine if there are in compliance with county ordinances concerning solid waste issues, illegal dumping regulations, and stormwater concerns. Our most successful program is our roadside dump program. We average close to 300 dumps a year. Most sites consist of furniture, appliances, tires, and rubbish. But the budget-wise, very similar to the years in the past. I think we cut about just under 10 grand off it this year. Does anybody have any questions about the budget?
Justice Dennis?
I appreciate you holding the budget down and everything like that, but I think we're gonna need you more now than ever before. What I'm seeing is people are moving out into the county. They're doing it, some of them don't even have septic systems. And I'm seeing this kind of things going on, and I'm thinking, wow, you know, I hate for us to have to police it, but we're gonna have to, I think. I mean, what I'm seeing, when you see it and actually see it going on, you say.
Normally in a situation like that, we'll go out there, inspect the property. If we see there's a problem with the septic system, we inform the Department of Health. And then we bring those folks in to talk to the property owners. But there are a lot of new folks moving into the county. That's just part of growth. But the folks, I do see a lot of folks that are coming in and they are compliant with our rules and regs. Most of them are happy to find a place out in the county that we have in northwest Arkansas. As far as the budget-wise, I've been able to keep it within the budget the last 6 or 7 years, so I think this coming year I can do it again. But I think next year, 2025, we'll probably have to look at an increase on a few line items.
Okay, well, thank you. I'll pay attention to who you are. I'm gonna get hold of you, because some of this is bad.
Be glad to take the call.
Thank you.
Justice Ecke?
Just a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Where are your offices? Are you here in the courthouse?
I know I'm on South Campus,
You're on the
right
South
next to the
Campus.
planning department.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
All right,
Thank you, sir.
We'll try.
Now we're up for Veteran Services, Director Dykes. I was one line item ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Veteran Services, Ben Dykes here, Washington County Vet Service Officer. A little ragged today, as everyone knows, the PACT Act deadline is tomorrow night at midnight, so that's the one-year intent to file that President Biden put into place so that veterans, if they file a claim between tomorrow and last August the 10th, they would be able to receive back pay on those benefits for the veterans' benefits. So it's been a bit of a scramble for the last about 2 months. We're averaging over 400 veterans per month in our office. I think I sent Judge the numbers on that. We are 500-600 phone calls a day, or not a day, for the month, and we're just overwhelmed with referrals. Before, we were able to handle veterans from out of the county, like Madison County, Sebastian, whenever they're coming into Fayetteville to see the VA hospital, and we're a county office, so we try to we put our Washington County residents first, and we fit in other veterans as we can with time and with space available. But it is very busy. Today we had a large event at the VA hospital. It was called Vet Fest. There was probably 5,000 veterans there this afternoon between 3 and 7 p.m. That's where I came from. And we were just really just putting intent to files in and filing claims on the go with our laptops and stuff there, just trying to get as many veterans as we can. And this goes back to presumptive conditions that are now recognized from Agent Orange and Vietnam veterans all the way up to Gulf War with the burn pits and things like that. So we're just seeing an abundance of veterans. There's a lot of younger veterans that are coming into our office that have decided to leave the military over the last 2 years, and we're seeing more and more of them. And but we're fully staffed. My staff is being trained, and they're hitting the ground running. They're veterans, so they're our people. This week, the judge had the pleasure of showcasing the Purple Heart. Monday was Military Order of the Purple Heart Day, and we recognized some of the Purple Heart recipients that we have here in the county, and we have quite a few. We get calls daily from outside of the county, from California, from Washington State, Arizona, New Mexico, people wanting to know why or what reason they should come here. And we have a laundry list of things for Northwest Arkansas that make us a destination place. The university, the Fortune 500 companies that are here, and then a great VA facility, and it is very attractive. And then also with that attractiveness is the tax-free benefits for military retirees. Military retirees and disabled veterans just in Washington County. We've got a little over 21,000 veterans just in Washington County. They bring in $77 million with an M dollars to Washington County through retirements and VA disability and different benefits. So that is that's a lot of money that you all can use to turn around and make some roads better, things like that. The tunnels to towers, Tad Sowers with the communications brought up a relevant fact that we had 5,300 residents or 5,300 visitors that came from everywhere. Since the tunnels to towers has been here, I know of 3 veterans that have had their homes paid for by tunnels to towers. By bringing them to this area, the firefighters that were there make those connections, make those interrelationships, and there's 3 homes that are now mortgage-free and veterans that are here in the community. So I want to say, first and foremost, thank you to all of you, because one of the resolutions that I've seen, like 15-0, that's unheard of for a quorum court to pass that, and that's all because of you. We really appreciate that. With that being said, I'm open to questions. My budget is pretty simple. We have a small budget. I'm open to questions. Everything is minimal. You might notice a couple of things here. I think line 3009, that's a biannual renewal on a software that we use that gives us access to the VA, because we're kind of a switchboard operator that we are allowed to put in data and then we migrate it to the VA with this Citrix server. And our IT department is absolutely amazing, because I don't speak IT, but they do, and they make it happen. The other thing you might see is travel in the 2023 budget. I think it's line item 3031. The previous years with the pandemic, there was no travel. That is for continuing education, training and certifications. Typically, it is down in Little Rock. In the past, it's been able to be done via Skype or Zoom or whatever. I think this year, or in 2024, they want to do an in-person where they get all the county VSOs from the state and get caught up on some of those things. We increased our 3071, we increased that to 3,000 because of events that we would like to hold for Veterans Day and other events like that. With that, and then the meals and lodging, that goes along with some of those events as well. With that being said, that's kind of my budget. It's pretty simple. We're definitely one of the smaller budgets, but we have a large return on investment, and the veterans definitely appreciate everything that you all do for us.
Questions for Director Dykes? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Ms. Koger is always at all of our meetings. She's very supportive. We really appreciate you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Justice Koger, did you have a?
Well, I do. I guess it's more of a comment. I don't understand how the Veterans Administration can operate with this small a budget. Is there a separate budget that the federal government helps you with?
With myself and the 2 other VSOs that I have with accredited through the Arkansas Department of Veterans Affairs, we get a stipend. It's rolled back into the general budget. It's about $1,500 a piece. We're a small budget. There's not a whole lot that we need. We just operate. They're our people, and we take care of our people. Every day's Veterans Day in our office.
Yeah, I see that. I'm just amazed that you can do all that with such a small budget, though.
I've done more with less.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you, Director Dax.
Yes, sir.
Our next budget on our list is the County Extension Office. We support the efforts of the County Extension Office. Miss Katie Teague represents our Washington County Extension Office. You guys have probably met her. She's here most of the time when the Extension Office provides us treats at the quorum court meetings. They have submitted their budget. There's no change for prior years. And so if we have questions with that, we'll follow up with Ms. Teague. With that, we're going to bring up the road department. Superintendent Crowder.
Get my spectacles on here. Good evening. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Budget Committee for their dedication to the numerous departments that y'all have sat here and listened to and that they presented their budgets tonight. Without that support of you, our citizens of Washington County, we couldn't serve them. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Our road department, I believe, is probably the best of the best. The men and women of the road department continually impress me every day with their dedication and skill set that they display in their performance. It's truly a pleasure and honor to serve as their director, and at this time I'd like to highlight some of their accomplishments they've had from year to date. Our 13 grader operators have graded 966.94 miles of gravel roads. Our tile crew has installed 111 culverts and 35 concrete boxes throughout the county. Our dump trucks that we have hauled approximately 50,000 tons of SB2 Class 7 throughout the county. Our dump trucks have hauled 3,786.3 tons of asphalt and 7,400 tons of half-inch asphalt chips in support of our paving crew. Our bridge crew has poured over 336 yards of concrete while repairing 3 bridges, 2 of which were damaged during the May 22 flood. Some of you guys, when we had our bus tour, y'all were able to visit a couple of those sites. Our paving crew has chip sealed over 40 miles of road this year, spraying 171,000 gallons of CRS2 oil, and has paved 6 miles of asphalt. And our brush hogs have mowed 678 miles of right-of-way. And if you're not amazed by those numbers, we also have answered and completed 1,016 individual citizen road concerns that have come in via either telephone or a web-based complaint system. So at this time, I salute the team and their dedication that they have demonstrated down at the road department to our citizens of Washington County. So at this point, I would like to go into our budgets. We have 3 different budgets that we have down at the road department. And one thing to keep in mind that our 3 budgets are not taken out of general. They are served under a different tax. So we will start out with our 2,200 budget. We had some changes, but we also had quite a few reductions in a lot of the line items. Our first jump that we had was in our 2001 general supplies. This line item covers multiple items. One thing that it covers that you can understand so you can see where the jump is whenever we go out and do road work and we clear out the right-of-ways and we widen our roads, we have to repair or replace the fencing. So the fencing cost comes out of general supplies. Our cleaning supplies that we use on our paving equipment, it's a chemical that it breaks down the materials. That comes out of that. With the increased chip seal that we do, we're using more of that, and the stuff is expensive. We've seen a great cost in that. Also, all of our signs, our seating, we have our own sign department, so we make the signs for that. Whenever you see an increase in the metal prices for salvage, we have an increase in the production of signs. I don't know where the signs go, but we have to replace them. So Those costs are also have gone up. That's the majority of where the additional cost come in at. The straw, the seed, the mulch, when we hydro seed, all that comes in out of that general supplies. If you look on down, our next will be our tires and lubes, 2008. We have seen a significant increase this year in tire pricing. We do have some loaders at our Morrow crusher that's going to have to be new tread put on next year. We recently bought 4 new tires for another loader, and just one set of tires for that thing was $40,000. So we're looking at $10,000 a tire. So we're not buying our passenger vehicle tires. Our next one would be our 2025 asphalt. Our asphalt price has increased dramatically. Like Justice Dennis said, fuel price has gone up, fuel price goes up, asphalt goes up because the oil cost. 2027, we increased in that line item as well, and we have a project plan for 2024, and it makes more common sense for us to outsource the dirt for that project due to the location and the haul cost and time that it would cost us to get the material there. We've run the numbers, and it would make more sense to purchase that closer location. Our culverts in 2026, I skipped that one. That one had a slight increase. That's because of the metal pricing. That's for our culverts. We also have an increase in our other services and charges under 3004. We anticipate the cost in that for our County Road 25 bridge. And also the other professional services in 3009 was also, that would be other professional services, and that bridge project will be contracted out. And so we're anticipating some additional cost on that as well. Then you look over into line item 3073. We had an increase there, a significant, and that is also to cover our lease payments on the dump trucks that I do greatly appreciate that the Quorum Court approved that ordinance last time so we could get those, and those trucks are actually on the road today hauling material. So thank you, but we do have to pay for those, and that's where that increase comes, because it comes under lease. And then 3109, that is a new, we traditionally have not put any money in that line item, but we put $25,000 in that line item because when we're doing road improvements, we try to negotiate with the landowners for the right-of-ways and stuff, and at times we cannot, negotiate that if that comes up in the future, and we don't want to have to wait for an ordinance to get passed to get money appropriated into that line item, because that gives time for prices to go up and maybe other projects get turned down. So we put that in there as a safety net in case we ever had to use that. So we don't anticipate having to use it. We haven't in the past, but it's a fail-safe. And that is for the 0200 budget. In the half-cent sales tax budget, the 0201, we went up in, this is a tax that is specifically for the roads, the way I look at it. So the money there, we spend basically 100% of that, and it goes towards road improvements and what goes into the road improvements. So we went from, we had a $500,000 increase in our 2025, and that is for asphalt. Asphalt has went up tremendously. And we are also, our chip seal has, one thing we are ramping up to do for next year is, this year we are at 65 miles that we're going to chip seal. Next year we are planning on resealing 100 miles. So we have a huge additional cost with that. The gravel, dirt, and sand of 2027, we added 100,000 into that line item this year because of the de-icer that we used last year. We purchased that. You might have, you probably noticed that when we had the snow and ice last year, we deployed out. it's called Ice Slicer. It is a natural salt that is purchased, and we put it out. It's not quite as corrosive as urethra and some of the other things, but it works outstanding. Our roads, a lot of our county roads that we had were wet. The snow and ice was gone off of it, so we did very well with that product, so we're going to continue using it. 3009, we have a software and a company we use. It's called Road Management Technologies, and this is software and hardware that's installed on our vehicles that monitor the road system that we have in Washington County. It will allow us to see the conditioning of a road. We get a PCI, which is a pavement condition index. That pavement, and we can actually go in and basically like look at a seismograph, and we can tell how rough these roads are, and that helps determine the condition of the road and when we need to maybe ramp it up a little bit on the maintenance cycle, or we can push it off a year if we have another road that's worse. So that covers that other professional services for that contract that we have with them. It also allows us to know the locations of our vehicles. If our vehicles are having issues, we get text messages on them. So we pass that over to our maintenance crew, and then they can maybe fix a sensor or something before it causes additional charges with breakdown. So it's a very good system. It also handles all of our road complaint systems. So if somebody comes in, our supervisors that's out in the field, they have hardware with them. The manager puts the concern in. The concern automatically goes to the supervisor out in the field, and they get a text message, and they can handle the complaint, concern, or whatever it may be instantly. So that's how I know we have 1,016 that we've handled and completed since the beginning of the year. It's tracked. So that's our half-cent sales tax budget. Our third and final budget is our 2020 road additional fuel tax. This one we also use, we try to maintain it straight just for our roads. And all the money in there is in our asphalt and gravel, dirt, and sand. And that is, in our 2027, we did have an additional $50,000 in that this year, because we are also going to be using a pre-treatment for the ice and snow events. It's a liquid. It's a different liquid than what, the prune juice some people see being sprayed, but you put this down and it will help work with our ice slicer to make the roads maybe get ahead of the game. In every snow event or every winter storm, you have to treat it differently. They're not the same. It depends on the temperature, what you apply, when you apply, at what rate you apply. So we are purchasing that this year if we can get the budget passed. We added a little bit more in for asphalt because we plan on doing a resurfacing project. It's going to require some more funding in there. So one other thing in our budgets that we requested for is our capital. And I'd like to go over our capital and what we're asking for. In our capital, we have some, we're in the need of a new asphalt paver. Paver that we have is 10 years old. It has laid many miles of asphalt road, and the screed on there, which is the thing that rides in the back that levels out the asphalt, that does wear out after time. And when you're asphalting and you're paying $85 a ton, so you have $1,600 worth of asphalt in the truck, and you have 8 trucks lined up and your paver breaks down, you're wasting a lot of money because it gets hard quick. So when your paver starts to get to the end of its life, that's one piece of equipment that you don't want to break down in the middle of the job. And as expensive as they are, they range anywhere from $600,000. We do have some quotes for around $512,000. So you don't have a spare one sitting around. So we do need to look at replacing that one. We are in the need of 2 rollers, sheep's foot rollers, pad rollers. These rollers help compact to subgrade, so when we do pave a road or chip seal a road, the road doesn't fall apart. We can get good compaction on it. The ones that we have now, I believe, are 1997 rollers, and we're still running them today, but the vibration that they perform and the compaction that they perform, generally, it takes a lot longer to get it if you can get it. We also are looking at one of our asphalt distributors. It's a 1996 asphalt distributor. So when we're going to upgrade from 65 miles to 100 miles of chip seal, we need 2 good distributors. We have 2 right now, but we would like to look at replacing the 96 with a new distributor. And we have 3 pickups that we're looking to replace. These are very good pickups. One's a 95 Ford, the other one's a 95 Ford, and one's a 98 Chevy. One of the Fords has 313,000 miles on it. The 95 Chevy has 292,000, and the 98 Chevy has 221,000 miles. So they are well worn, and we could replace those. We're also in the 200 budget. We have done some research, and our staffing at the road department has been stagnant for quite some time. We tried to go back and get some accurate numbers. It appears that since 2000, we haven't grown any from the 88 that employees that we have now. We pulled a 2000 census, and since 2000, Washington County has grown 57.4%. So what we are asking for is to increase our positions at the road department by 9 employees. We have a position which is a assistant office manager. We have 2 of those positions. We will dissolve the second assistant office manager and reconvert that over into an operator position. So that would be 10 operators that we will have that we could staff and put into the workforce. Currently, as of today, we are 100% staffed. We have no openings. So with the increased population and increased growth around here, the increased workload that we're undertaking, we really need the extra, hands out there to help us.
I'll just say, I think it tells off of what Treasurer Hill was saying. We've seen tremendous growth in our revenue from a tax standpoint. The road department specifically funded through special taxes. I think as our population grows too, the expectations of the taxpayer grow. And that's what we're trying to make sure that we're fulfilling, is this catching up and then trying to keep ahead of this infrastructure needs that we're greatly seeing around this county. And these new positions would help us increase our sophistication in the road department quite a bit and what we're able to undertake. And so we know we don't take the request of 9 new positions lightly, but we also think that we're at a point in time in the road department where we could really utilize that and put that to good use for the taxpayers.
These 9 positions that we're asking for will allow us to take and dedicate that crew or build that crew into the paving crew. Right now, our paving crew is also our tile crew, which is also our chip seal crew. So if they're out chip sealing, they're not fixing potholes. They're not putting in culverts. And as the population continues to grow, people build driveways, want to connect to our county roads, we have to install the culverts. If, they can get a contractor to install it, but we go out and size it and we install it for them if they wish. And so with these other positions, we can have a dedicated tile right-of-way crew is what we've been kind of calling it down at the road department. They want to handle putting in all of our culverts, all of our clearing of the ditches to help the drainage along the roads, which would help the roads. The paving crew would do the paving and do the chip seal. You may ask yourself, what are they going to do in the wintertime when it's 30 degrees and they can't pave? They can also help with the ditch cleaning and the tile. We've got plenty of ditches and plenty of tile to put in. So, but it will keep us from hopping one crew, delaying this project while we complete this other project. So it'll make us more streamlined and more successful in our road system in the way we handle our maintenance.
Any questions for Superintendent Crowder? Great job, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I think these remaining budgets we can move through fairly quickly tonight. The American Rescue Plan budget, we don't have any activity. There's no budget submitted for that. We eliminated the administrator position for that, and there's no thing to support there. The Crisis Stabilization Unit budget, that's a pass-through, just to pay the state, so there's not really any budget there per se. The building is updated by Buildings and Grounds. The HIV clinic is something that we support, that's also supported with a partnership with Washington Regional. We make a contribution to support that. Those efforts, that has not changed this year. Those amounts are the same. And then finally, the law library, we support that in our historic courthouse. I know I'm moving really fast, so if we need to stop and talk about one specifically, the law library saw some nominal increases in terms of just their software and insurance increases. The Westlaw, Councilor Lester touched on that in his budget, so that's one of the increases. And then also, like I said, the insurance that we're seeing from everywhere, the increases in that budget. That's it. I know it's been a very long evening. Let me just take the liberty to say, guys, the honor of my job comes from working with these people here at the county, all of our county employees, and especially our directors. It's my great pleasure and privilege to serve with you guys, and I'm really proud of you, and hopefully we can do great things for Washington County. I do think we have a public comment period that we need to address, so we have a 15-minute public comment period, limited 3 minutes per individual. Any public comments? I